Okay, David, we're here. Check the sound quality. Let me know if I've got the proper mic selected. I think I do. You should have fairly good audio at this point. It shouldn't sound really bizarre.
Hopefully not.
Well, I sound bizarre because I'm me, but I mean the sound quality should be okay. Isn't it funny how it's so delayed? Okay.
All right. Thanks, David.
I've got the right mic selected then. Okay. Let's wait for a few people to show up here. Okay, there's four people on already. Okay. Been kind of an interesting week, getting a lot of information on everything. And looks like today is going to be a little bit of mining exploration and a lot of leaching information would be my guess.
Or wherever we go.
Well, and plus questions, lots of questions.
Yeah, always helps.
Yeah, so anyhow, I have a glass here somewhere. Where the heck is it? Oh my goodness. It has disappeared upon me. Oh.
Find it. Yeah, it's with the humidity this low, you drink constantly.
Hello, William. How's it going? Your name looks new to me. Have you done this before? I don't recall seeing your name before. Anyhow, as you can see, we went out in the field again this week. Also got results back tediously slow. We were supposed to have results on Monday or Tuesday, but the air conditioning unit went out and in the analytical lab, and the analytical equipment doesn't work at above like 75 or 80 degrees. So first they had to replace the fan in the air conditioner before they could run
turn everything else on.
It was Friday afternoon before I finally got the samples. So that was kind of annoying. Then we went out in the field, took some more samples trying to define an ore body out there at Montana B. Let's see, what else? Anything else happened this week? Probably did. Anything else happen this week? I fixed a door jamb below.
Nothing I can think of.
David wants to know if everything's going good with you.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Sort of, it's hot here. It can quit.
It is kind of toasty and it's pretty smoky. I mean, how far away are the fires upwind this time? Because that's pretty good smoke now.
There's nothing immediate area here right now.
Yeah, it's 50 or 100 miles away at least, huh?
50 north of here, probably.
Yeah, that's probably not any of the smoke we're seeing.
No, most of this is coming from Idaho, I think.
Yeah.
Right on the border.
It's actually coming from Oregon. Oregon right now has the largest wildfire in the country. The smoke from Oregon is making it all the way to the East Coast. And columns of smoke and ash are going up to 7 miles high in the atmosphere.
That'll help the global warming. Actually, it will. It'll decrease it.
Right.
Yeah. See, it's a self-regulating system. It gets too hot, it gets dry, it burns, and that cools everything off. Piece of cake.
Well, actually, I think we'd have been hotter, but with the smoke, that's one thing that's
you
helping
can feel.
us.
You can feel the difference.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of days where the sky got blue all of a sudden, boy, the temperature raced right out.
Hey, Gold Panner, how's it going?
Hey, Gold Panner.
So, anyhow, what time is it now? Not even 6 yet. I better not. Eva's still doing okay. No breakthroughs on the treatment there. We're staying in town during the week in case there's a cancellation at the specialist's office. Then we can zip on over to Missoula and expedite things. Otherwise, it's going to be like another 4 weeks before she even gets in to see anybody. Yeah, that's annoying. And of course, it's better than some places where, due to COVID,
Yeah.
In Tucson, there's a lady he was talking. She couldn't get treatment for her breast cancer, so
Right.
now she's
Yeah.
terminal.
Can't even get in.
Yeah, it's like, man,
That's sad.
it is sad. Let's see. Got a little work to do on the truck this week. I got to replace the front spring bushings. Finally got those in. They're in that bucket over there. And got to do a little roof repair on the shop. Hey, Terry, how's it going?
Hey, Terry.
And what's you got anything for the tinfoil hat report tonight, little one?
Nothing at the moment. I'm going to start researching in a minute.
Okay. See how she does it? I got an hour. I can make this work.
Right.
I was watching a guy I watch from over in Great Britain. I forget what his name is again, but he was talking the Bank of England is wanting to come up with a Bitcoin-like cryptocurrency called, you're calling it, get this, Britcoin.
Really?
And they want to replace all cash.
Yeah, it's not going to work too good.
People aren't going to be happy with every transaction being
I just don't want to spill it.
Yeah. I look Chris comment. Not too shabby considering David Villa.
Yeah, that's Ed. He's answering.
I know. It just reads funny. Got 10 people so far.
Good.
The leaching tests continue to go fairly predictably, considering that now we know the Eco Goldex works. For example, this week I did something that one should always do, and that is I sent a blank to the lab, not telling them that it didn't have any gold in it, to make sure that it came back, no, this sample doesn't have any gold. And in fact, it was below detection limit.
Good.
So it was below 0.1 part per million. So exactly what I wanted to see there. It means that when I see gold, it means they're actually seeing gold. Terry Curry says, hi, Eva.
Hi.
And so we verified that. We are going to get some more Eco Goldex here as soon as we can, probably 25, 50 pounds, something like that, so that we can run. I don't want to be able to have enough to do everything we need this year, this season. Just get it in. Don't have to worry about.
Yeah, because that could be an issue.
With all this, the disruptions, who knows? But anyhow, so we want to get plenty of that. Chris, as usual, has been a great help in helping me work out details and getting me ideas and parameters and stuff. He's a better chemist and mathematician than I am, especially when it comes with mathematical chemistry. So El Guapo. By the way, that's David. I can tell you're not a native Spanish speaker. That's Guapo. Yeah, it's pronounced Wapple. Yep. So anyhow, we're planning on doing that. We've got to get in a power supply to start the electroplating tests. And got 12 people here. Well, 6:03. I might as well start discussing what I did. You want to get the whiteboard up? The
Yep.
blank one?
Yep. New pens too.
Oh, man. Throwing pins all at me.
Yep, just spin them.
Do you have like an orange one or something that I can use to simulate gold?
Yep.
Okay.
Orange or brown.
That orange
one
will, yeah.
One of them will show up.
Both
better
of
than
those
the
will do
other.
fine. Okay. So to recoup, we are working on leaching because the gold at this ore at Montana B is so fine it will not gravity separate. It won't even settle in still water worth of crap. Okay? To say nothing of gravity separate in flowing water. So in order to get the little gold particles,
have to do them a little bigger, Keith.
Can you see that, everybody?
Not very much. They're pretty small.
They're darn small gold particles. But anyhow, they're on these rock particles. Some are free, some are rock particles like that. So, just for my information, can anyone see the size of the gold particles on that screen there? Can you actually observe them or not? Fly poop? Yeah, fly poop's rather large compared to this stuff. Pretty much invisible to the naked eye, even if you had it sitting there. Kinda? Okay. I'll make it bigger. There's your gold particles. Now, ideally, for maximum recovery, what you'd have, I'll go to the black for the rock here. It's kind of iron anyway. Ideally, what you would like to have, so we're going to be bigger,
Liberated gold.
is gold particles completely separated from the rock particles. That's called mineral liberation. You pretty much need to have that for gravity separation, but for leaching, it allows the gold to dissolve faster because it's being dissolved from all sides. Okay? Now, because it's dissolving though, if you have a piece of gold sticking on the side of a rock, like this, it's still readily accessible to the solution. It will dissolve reasonably quickly. Okay? So your solution is going to attack the liberated gold the fastest, the exposed gold the next fastest, and then it'll start doing something over some period of geologic time to the stuff inside rock particles. Now, the problem is that depends enormously on the porosity of the rock particles, and rock, in general, isn't that porous.
Right.
So anything that's inside the rock tends to be inaccessible to the solution. It's just not going to dissolve in any reasonable period of time. In the case of heap leaching, where you have literally potentially years, you can deal with that to some extent. In the case of a tank leach, where you have a limited volume to deal with, that's much less desirable. Now, last week, I wish I could do this on the computer. Okay, the separate curve was last week, actually the week before. I showed that to you. And that was with the rock that had been run through the impact mill. There was no screening, just the air classification. And that's the curve we got. And that's what you would expect to see. The gold that is liberated and is well exposed is dissolving here. Then some of the less exposed gold, or the stuff that's kind of in the back of the hole, is dissolving here. And then here you're getting into the crystal lock gold to some extent. Now, this was a sample I just did. As you can see, first of all, the time scale is the same and everything else, but the total recovery was only 70% as opposed to 93%. And that's because it was a coarser grind. That was deliberate. Whenever you're designing a mill in the preliminary stages, you have to determine what is your optimum grind size, or at least approximately what is your optimum grind size. Because grinding is expensive and it creates slimes, real fine stuff that's hard to filter, hard to settle, hard to deal with. You don't want slimes if you can avoid it. So with this material that I tested last week, and I'm just reporting now, I took the run of dump material that had already been screened to 1/2 inch minus, screened it to 20 mesh. And so got a screen here, put it And this is 20 mesh. Is that on the screen there?
Yeah, it's probably a little small to read.
Okay.
You could.
Got a screen here. This is 20 mesh. Take the run-of-mine material here. The stuff that's fine goes through. This stuff goes through the rolls crusher, gets rescreened. Stuff goes through. Stuff that doesn't go through goes through the rolls crusher again, etc. Until 100% of it is 20 mesh minus. Now, the reason I did that, even though it took a couple hours and it was very, very annoyingly tedious, is because I wanted to minimize the overgrind. I wanted, as soon as it got 20 mesh minus, to get out of the grinding circuit so I didn't grind it a second time.
Yep.
And that's a little tedious for what you would do in a real mill, but it's what I wanted to do for the testing.
Yep.
To make sure, because if that would actually recover it, if the rock was porous enough, there are indications it might have been that grind was,
Good
fine enough.
Right. Good.
Then we go even bigger and see what would happen.
Test it again.
However,
What you learned.
that was not the case. To look at the chart again, you'll see I only got 70% recovery in 32 hours compared to 93% recovery in 24 hours. That is not good enough. It needs a finer grind. It's inefficient. So what we need to look at this curve here, this is a more complex curve for a very particular reason. As I showed you last week, I think I made a video.
Yeah.
I had 5 bottles on the bottle roll. Each one was the same material and running at the same time, so I could take one sample out of each bottle so I didn't have to correct for how much I'm taking out.
Yep.
But that also allows me to do 5 different chemistries at the same time. Now the problem is you have to go, well, if it's a different chemistry, how can you tell what the result is? And the result, the way you do that is you look at this curve. See that kink in there? You'd expect this curve to go up here, but instead it was below. That's because with no lime added at all, it didn't recover as fast. So that lets me know no lime is not a good option.
Well, explain, Keith, that that's 5 separate samples.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't come from the same bottle. They came from each of you.
These are 5 separate tests running concurrently. Okay, they're separate rolling bottles with slightly different parameters, but only one sample taken at a time. If all the solution was the same, then the data points would be the same as is happening in each single bottle. And this way I was able to test other things because each one of those data points costs $25. So I'm trying to kind of optimize the information gathering, and that lets me know I do need to have some hydroxide in there. The pH was too low there. On the other hand, on the previous testing, when the pH goes above 11, the curves drop again.
Right.
Okay. So I've now bracketed the pH.
Right.
It needs to be between about 10, 10 and a half. The optimum is somewhere in there. Now, one thing I noticed with the no lime sample was it settled really well. I got a clear solution in only a couple minutes of settling, like 10 minutes. That's highly desirable. No matter how much lime I put in, if I put any lime in of any significance at all, then it really inhibited the settling. So what I'm going to try and do on this next test is I'm going to use lye, sodium hydroxide, caustic soda. It's a lot more powerful than lime, so I will use a lot less of it. And it's different than lime. Therefore, it's sodium hydroxide instead of calcium hydroxide, so the secondary reactions are going to be different. And if we're lucky, then it'll settle as well as the no lime, but it'll have the pH of the lightly limed material. So That's what I'm going to be shooting for this test, pH 10 to 10.5 with sodium hydroxide. Now, the other thing I'm doing is I'm using the same material, just ground to a different size. This was 20 mesh. I did the same process to 80 mesh, which was also very tedious. But anyhow, by taking it to 80 mesh, I'm going to have more liberation, more exposure. I'm guessing just roughly that will probably be in the 80 to 85% range at 24 hours. And that still is probably going to be lower than we're going to want to do, considering we just run it through the impact mill and get up to 90.
Right.
So
Finer grind.
but it's worth a try. It's also possible because these two curves are literally two different materials. One is pack rat Penthouse taken from the vein. The other is screen dump material. Actually, the pack rat Penthouse is a lower ore grade, but it's a different material. So by using the same material at a different grind, I can kind of compare. If everything looks like the main variable is just the ore grind, then I can feel fairly confident that that should work. At that point, assuming that the settling is going reasonably well, the recovery is going reasonably well and stuff, then we're going to be upgrading to cement mixer size samples. Instead of a little rolling bottle with 250 grams in it, we're going to have a cement mixer with 25 or 50 pounds of rock in it, or maybe even more eventually. That's probably what I'll start with. And the same slurry concentration, 2 to 1. And that will give me, first of all, just bigger samples to verify that it scales up. You cannot be certain that it will scale up until you scale it up and verify it. Once you go more than a 10 to 1 scale up, something may happen that you're not expecting.
Yeah.
And so if it's 10 to 1 or more, you want to try it instead of, well, it worked great in the lab, let's build a 1,000-ton-a-day mill. No, that's not a real high probability success there, because something will happen that is going to be different. It may not matter. It may matter a very great deal indeed.
Right. If you're not recovering it, you're in trouble.
But the other thing is that I will now have somewhere in the neighborhood of like 5 to 10 gallons of solution per batch. Yeah, it should be about 10 gallons if it's 50 pounds. And that means...
So okay, when you do 2 to 1,
mm-hmm.
Let's just say you're using your 5-gallon pail with 40 pounds of rock you're throwing in the cement mixer.
Okay.
All right, how much liquid are you putting in then?
80 pounds.
Okay, so you're going by weight.
By weight.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's something they need to know.
You will measure it by volume because it's easier in general.
Right.
But you're going to weigh it. In this case, I'll actually be weighing the solution because it's a luggage scale.
Right.
They're about $12.
Yeah.
And you can just hang the bucket from it and weigh it real easy.
Exactly.
And so I will be doing it by weight, but all the calculations are done by weight. For example, if you crushed rock, there's void space in there.
Yep.
And it changes depending upon the crush.
Right.
So you got to weigh it to know that's
why I
what
wanted you to clarify that.
Absolutely.
So
That's
everybody,
great question.
Everybody's on this. They understand what you're saying.
How come he's using the plural of lady? Dirty go.
That's harassment.
My pronoun is he.
Yeah.
But anyhow.
Not it. Not.
Anyhow. So.
Your pronoun is emperor.
Yeah. Unless you're around, then it's you. But anyhow. So. Then I'll have, how much would 50 pounds at 1 ounce per ton be? I had a calculator somewhere. Do you see a calculator anywhere? There's one.
There's one.
There's a better one somewhere else, but anyhow, let's see.
It's probably laying here.
400.
50 pounds. 50 pounds is a 40th of a ton, isn't it?
Yeah, so it would be a 40th of an ounce.
Okay, so we'd be looking at about a gram. So each one of those samples should theoretically yield between 1/2 and 1 gram of gold recovered. Roughly the same amount of silver. It's running a little less silver than gold here. And there's going to be base metals recovered also. We'll try and tweak the parameters as much as possible to minimize that. It just uses up chemicals that you don't want to. But I should actually be producing, let's say, quantities 1/2 gram to 1 gram per test now, which is going to be a lot more fun than numbers.
Yeah.
You know, just taking solution samples down and getting a number.
Test.
That was something I can see. And then,
So 31 samples will be a 1 ounce bead.
yeah, exactly. And then we're going to try and scale it up to where we're doing 1/2 ton to 1 ton per day by the end of summer, by the end of the season. That's the basic plan. So we should be recovering somewhere in the neighborhood of a 1/2 ounce per day if we achieve what we're going to do, what we're planning on doing. And at the same time, we're doing a bit of exploration. For those of you who saw the video today, I was going underground and taking some samples to try and determine where a good place to start mining would be. Now, before I forget, I'm going to do a little diversion here into the theory of leaching, because a very, very important concept that affects all dissolution and plating. And it's called the Nernst layer. Okay? Now let's suppose here is a solid strip of whatever, let's say gold. Okay? And this is solution. Okay? And it's immersed in the solution. And these chemicals are working on the gold and dissolving it. Now, if there's no circulation going on, then what will happen is real close. I know this may be a little hard to see, but don't worry, because it will get better as I do it. Real close to the surface, you have a lot of gold ions, but they've also depleted the chemicals that dissolve the gold. Farther away, it's less concentrated. Farther away, it's even less concentrated, until finally, at some distance, it is the same concentration as the bulk liquid. This area that varies in density of ions is called the Nernst layer, after some idiot named Nernst, who got his name immortalized by just noticing this and quantifying it. But anyhow, this is the Nernst layer. Okay? And if there's no circulation, this chemical reaction can only occur as fast as the gold dissolves, diffuses through the solution, which is very, very slow. I'll need to try and do it next week or something, but I can actually make like concentrated salt solution and put water on top and put dye in it And you'll see it takes literally days
To separate that.
for those two to merge. But it takes how long if you stir it?
Pretty
about a
fast.
second.
Yeah, pretty fast if you can circulate.
This is why you want to agitate, or at least move. It could be a flow, it could be more violent agitation, but you want movement of the liquid. This is why the best recovery comes from an agitation leach. It gets the best contact and
You're moving this ion over somewhere.
You know, as soon as these things they get moved away.
Right.
And so it reacts basically. That's why you stir the sugar in your coffee instead of just pour it in the bottom and look at it.
Right. Exactly.
You know, makes a big difference.
Still in the bottom of your coffee when you get to the bottom.
This is why the combination of fine grinding and an agitation leach will give you much higher recoveries in much shorter periods of time than either vat leaching or heap leaching.
Correct.
Okay, that's the physical process that's actually happening. That's why it's important. So I wanted to yes, Chris. Yeah, that's called pack crawling chromatography. So anyhow, that's why you want to grind. That's why you want to agitate to get your best recoveries. Obviously, fine grinding and agitation all cost more money than no grinding and no agitation. This is the trade-off. This is why you've got to make that.
But like you were saying, I mean, if you can get good enough liberation or free enough gold at a higher grind where you're not having to get it down to some, like this stuff's pretty fine. This is about the level of unbelievable level. Really.
Some rock is a lot more porous than others. For example, if you were to get reasonable recoveries real cheap of copper oxide minerals, they just take run-of-mine material and dump it, into big dumps and then put sulfuric acid on it.
Yep.
And that is so cheap and so reasonably effective that it works.
Yep.
And you've got to shake your netters. Anyhow, I'm not sure what that means, Lars. I'll take it as a compliment. Whenever I don't understand, it must be good, right? Anyhow, so now the other question is, if you have a process that gets the gold out of the rock, you got to get some rock.
Yep.
Okay.
Now you got to go mining.
In this particular case, and this is going to be a little hard, if here's the side of the mountain, okay, we have 3 declines running into, okay, this one's actually not that deep. That one goes over here. That one goes down to here. This one keeps going. Okay. There's a tunnel here. Okay. When you're looking at a side view, you've got that. If you turn this around, this lower decline, that didn't work well. The lower decline is here. There's a tunnel. Then you have the middle decline, which is by far the longest. And then the upper decline, which is on the same start. I'm just going to do it. It goes like that. Okay. Now this is what I call the pack rat structure. The sedimentary layers are bedded like this, and the pack rat structure is like this. Okay, it's between the beds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you look at the video, you can kind of see that when I went from the middle decline to the pack rat, to the lower decline there. I walked this tunnel here. This is where that airline that, I don't know why they did it that way. It's running along the floor, then they jump it up 5 feet and run it along the ceiling. So you got to dive around it or through it somehow. Like, what the hell? You know, if you got two 90-degree hells, just put a close nipple there and run it on the floor. But anyhow, so the pack rat structure is here. We're in this one going this way. And then where this surface is what I would call the, to show you that's not in the same plane. This is what we call the perpendicular vein, and it is near vertical. It varies anywhere from, about a foot across to 2 or 3 feet across. Nice. Got a lot of iron in it. It's softer. The pack rat looks porous, but it's harder than crap. Okay? It is hard to break. This stuff's a lot easier to deal with. But, so, on this structure here, and this goes to scale down to about there, I've taken a sample here, sample here, sample here, sample here, like that every 20 feet. This one was ore, this one was ore, this one was ore, and this is, I'll call it low grade. Now, it wouldn't be low grade for anything but a micro mine, okay? And it continued to go to low grade down there. So this trip, what I did was I took a sample here, and here,
Split your differences.
and here,
Yeah.
and here, trying to make sure that this is in fact ore in here and find the ends.
Right.
Now, if you look at that video, you'll see the grate on that middle decline there, right up here. And the distance between the lagging and the rails, fairly small, 2.5 feet maybe, something like that. If I tried to wear a backpack, I couldn't really go down there. It's that narrow.
Mm-hmm.
But the floor is 12 to 18 inches above the bottom of the grate opening. So if this shows ore here, now this is hypothesized here, okay? This was ore, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's going on down there. Actually, I think this is going to be ore. There's reasons for it.
Yeah. Okay.
Because they dug extra stuff there.
They did a little pocket or something.
Yeah, there was some pocket they were shading. If this is ore up here, I could take out bottom right here, about a foot or 18 inches, give me some more room, give me a fresh surface to establish my rail system on.
Yep.
Okay. And then right here, start mining it like this.
Right.
And take this back to wherever the waste is here. This rail, I plan on maintaining this direction because it gets me access to everything else. But run the rails here on stoles, socket them well.
Right.
And then
You can
keep
work
mining
under
and
it.
hauling it up and just keep slicing this thing out like this, wherever it goes,
Right.
wherever the ore body is. And we could mine a couple 100 tons before we get to the 40-foot level, potentially. Now, one of the complications of this, make sure any spin the letter.
That was on that last comment of Lars's.
Anyhow, let me give you a little better, little blown up view. If here's the middle decline, there's the 40-foot station there. It comes down here, and then it starts opening up pretty good here, which tells me that that was good ore.
Yeah.
And then it kind of heads down here. Now this side, this area here, looks to me like they did not peel it all the way back to the sandstone formations. It looks reasonably good. It might not have been as good as what they were going for,
Might not have been.
but it looks, I mean, sampling is, in the ounce per ton range,
Right.
and it's just hanging there. Now that's why in that video I said, see that stuff is
Yeah.
just hanging there?
Yep. Easy enough to take.
And to me, it seems kind of dangerous too.
Right.
Okay. So my thought was, say, start up here and start mining wherever the
Next
edge of the ore is.
Next split in there is.
Okay. And lay your ladder track here. And as you're going, put stoles in here as you go for ground support. And then once you get to this area here, then at the appropriate point, start working out across here, peeling that side, making sure you got everything barred down, cleaned up, etc. And put in some stoles as you go, put your decking on that.
Yeah.
And then when you're done up here, pull your decking, leave the stoles, do your next layer, same thing. And by doing that, you can put in enough stoles to give you good ground support, and you're leaving them up here as you go too. And the decking moves with you until such time as, say if you're down here, well, that's a long way for a rock to fall. So you might want to leave a deck, you know, leave a deck there so any rock that falls,
Right.
it's going to hit the deck, not hit your head.
It doesn't come all the way down the mine.
I'm perfectly fine to have the deck get broken. My head is a different story.
Yep.
So, let's say, so our ladder and rail will come down like this, and I say there could be quite a few tons there, but we're just guesstimating. At 40 feet here, that's where this tunnel comes back and then heads over. And this area here did not seem to be too mineralized, so it's probably kind of sort of something like that. Down here, they dug into the footwall. You see this kind of come down a little bit, so I think somewhere around here is the edge of this ore zone. And I'm not sure how rich that is, whether it's ore grade or not, but it's looking like it's something kind of like that. Okay. And the upper decline here, it was low grade. It was not what I'd call ore grade, but it all had mineralization in it too. So it depended on how much your costs were.
Is this a real defined edge in here?
That's your back.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you're at the top.
But it's I mean the material still goes. It's not like it pinches off.
You may have, you still may have some material in here.
There could be quite a lot. So you could, sample your back here, and if it turns out that that back is ore, start mining it out too. Take it with this one, until you run into. Let's just draw a line here. Okay, here's your
ore body,
theoretical edge of what we consider to be good. So you go over here. And then this will be the next slice and the next slice and like that. And so you wind up with your ladder rail suspended in the middle of a giant stope. But it would all be pretty easy. And vertebrate mammals' distributed neural circuits in the brain are involved in emotion-related behavior. Okay. But that's kind of the guesstimate as to what we're looking at. And you can always, as you're taking the slices, you can always drill holes a few feet into the rock to get samples to see, do we want to move this or leave it? Are we calling this the edge?
Yeah, it'd be easy enough to even in your back to drill. You could get 8-foot depths really easy.
Yeah.
With a rotary and pull samples.
It's clear right here. They started a little notch here, and here's the hill over here. It's clear that over here they did a cutout and they started a little notch there. They were hoping
to get a ton ore pass
that they could run through along that.
How far is that from there to there?
Only about 50 feet.
Oh shit!
Yeah, it's not very far.
Well, that'd be worth mining first. Get an ore pass.
But there's nothing there.
But just get the ore pass in, and then you can drop all of this out.
I understand what you're saying, but as I say, right now there's no significant
You use-
ore here. The mineralization sucks.
Yeah, but if it's only 50 feet to hit daylight, it would make sense to drill it and take it out. Because lifting all this ore out, that is no fun if you could drop it to here and take it right out.
It would certainly work better, but you're talking a capital expense before you're making money.
Yeah, but
And-
50 feet of rock would not take that long to drill and move.
Not a huge,
It wouldn't.
but another thing is when you're doing this, you're moving almost all ore, so
Right.
your surface disturbance is negligible.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, this would not necessarily be so. So that's basically what we're looking at. I'm trying to get, say, hopefully by the end of this summer.
If I could make a suggestion,
Huh?
if we happen to do this moving of stuff that's not ore, when we have a little trailer behind us, there's no reason why it couldn't migrate down to the cyclone, the other place instead,
That would be very expensive.
because then there would only be a very small hole.
Yeah, that would be very expensive to do. Okay, it would be an expensive way to haul material. It would be a lot cheaper to dump it in the stopes over at the pack rat. So, make a little horseshoe
Yeah.
and just
Dump it over.
dump it in and fill the stopes. Give you some ground support while you're at it.
Sure.
You know,
That makes sense.
and that's another thing you can do.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you're right. The ground support starts becoming an issue. This is why, because this is a vertical vein, you can provide pretty good ground support by simply putting stoles in there, because the ground is not trying to come down on you, it's just trying to squish out.
Right.
And therefore there's a lot less force involved, especially as the laminations, they got some pretty good quartzite layers in there.
Kind of interesting, that video.
Almost
today.
like poured concrete,
Yeah.
so that'll help stabilize that. You want to have a good, I don't know, a ground support specialist, probably a mining engineer, look at this and give you a few
Pointers.
calculations and say, okay, to be perfectly safe, you're going to want this size stole every so many feet vertically and horizontally,
Yeah.
and that should give you a good thing. They might want to use rock bolts and chain link or something like that too.
Yeah.
I don't see that it's really going to be that necessary if you have catch.
Yeah, if you leave
Decks.
some decks in there.
You know, because then a small rock isn't going to do any problem. Just clunk.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Some decks make sense.
So anyhow, this is kind of the idea at the present time. And in order to figure out whether that makes any sense, I've taken these samples and they're off. Actually, they're not even off yet. They're still in my truck. I got to get them crushed and split and sent off to the lab. So, write that on my little list of crap here. Middle decline.
Yeah. Samples.
N4C. Samples. 2assay. Okay, that pretty much fills up my day for tomorrow. Might as well put it over here, huh? But anyhow, the question of bolts, mesh, things like that, all depends on the rock, things like the price of lumber, the price of steel, the availability of different materials, et cetera, et cetera. And lots of bolts, not a problem. Now, this particular thing, one of the good things is bolts are real good at holding layers together. For example, there's another mine there that I'm looking at in the general area. You have these sedimentary layers like this, And you've seen in this case, there are some thin shale layers
In between, yeah.
you know, and then you have another shale layer here. And so this is going to tend to want to peel off. If you remove this rock here and create a void, this is going to want to tend to peel off and fall. So what rock bolts do, you know, washer plate, you put your bolt in here, you have expanding anchor back here, or they're usually split sets now.
You know,
And it clamps all those
layers
together. Think of it as like making plywood out of individual sheets.
Yep.
You know, instead of glue, you're using rock bolts. You would also, quite frequently, especially if you had something hanging like that, put your bolts here, and you have like chain link mesh or some kind of wire mesh
They'll bolt in with
that's
it.
under the washer plates of the bolts, so that anything small that just happens to pop off
Just hangs there.
doesn't fall.
Yep.
It just hangs there.
Hangs there.
There's a lot of possibilities here. Yeah, there's no nuggets, Lars. Plan B.
B, or D or E or whatever.
Yeah. But anyhow, this is kind of what we're looking like. We're not going to be moving too much rock this year. We're going to be focusing more on building the milling facilities.
And
We have plenty of dump
right.
to provide the raw material
Bulk sampling and
to get the mill up and running, and
Yep.
etc. Your estimation, how long before we're going to be closed out by the snow at about 5,500 feet?
middle of October.
Middle of October?
I mean, you could get that one in September that always is a wonder, you know,
but then it melts.
usually.
Yeah.
A few years ago, we had 30 inches the September 12th, and it didn't really melt after that.
Yeah.
That was the shortest year. Otherwise, quite a few years, even up where I was, and I was at almost 6,000 feet, we were able to run into the first week of November with placer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a pain that last week or so, but
Everything's trying to freeze.
Yeah, but we did it. We got to like November 8th or something.
Yeah. So, I say this year is pretty much going to be research and development of the dynamics of the leaching system,
Right.
and then building, let's say, somewhere around a couple 100 pound per hour milling setup. We'll probably build that on private property over here by Helena, because at that distance, you could have a person with a pickup truck make 2 trips in one day.
Yeah.
So if, say, I was down there screening material and stockpiling it in buckets, start the night before. Then he shows up, takes out of Helena in the morning, shows up there, 9 or 10 in the morning, load the buckets in the truck. He takes off, goes to the ranch, offloads the buckets, goes back, have another set of buckets ready for him. He takes them off. We can haul, 2 tons in a day, and screening dump ain't that hard. Even if you're rejecting, say, 3/4 of the mass, you're still,
Covering, getting
you
through some
you can shovel a couple tons an hour.
ground.
It's not that hard. Okay, Andreas. The way that they do this, there's a number of different ways they can anchor these bolts. Okay, I'll leave that there. I might need it. Let's say I'll just do the back here. So you got these layers here. Now, if you got a good solid layer here, let's say this is quartzite, this is shale, and this is quartzite, then if you run your bolt and anchor it in here, you'd be in pretty good shape. However, the new kind of bolts they have, if you look at the end, They're like this. They've got a ring at the near end, and at the far end it tapers down. But it's basically a roll pin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's called a split set, and you drill a hole that's just slightly smaller than the main diameter for, let's say, 4 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Then you switch steels, and your 6-foot steel has a smaller drill bit on it. And you drill the last 2 feet with that. You take your 6-foot bolt, you slide it in there, and then you hammer it in.
Ram it in. Yeah.
Now what happens is if anything tries to move here, it shifts, and the bolt, to exaggerate, bends. That can't come out because it's bent, you know? And so the split sets will hold very well. If you had a situation where it was very difficult to control and you needed to control it, if it was a shallow opening here, you could use timbers.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
and lagging or
right,
something like that,
You have to set them back.
so that you've got something holding it up. Or you can use longer bolts. You can use adhesive.
Yeah.
They have adhesive bolts
Yeah.
where you stick it in. They use that a lot in the coal stuff because it's hard to get anything hard enough to really
Right. It wants to
get it in
shatter.
there. And so they'll stick a bolt in, and it'll have a nut on the end. And then after so many hours of setting, then they torque
Tighten
the
it down.
nut
Yeah.
to compress the whole thing. You can also drill long holes and grout a cable in the entire length of it.
Right.
So you can have a 50 or 100-foot long
Drill
attachment.
Right.
In some cases, you can even drill through from surface.
Right.
You know, here's your thing. I mean, like up here, drill through like this
And hold
and
it.
put your anchors if you needed to. Now that would be way too expensive for what
Right.
we're doing.
Yeah.
It's just these things
Larger
are
scale.
possible. There's a great variety of ground control techniques. Another thing you could do in a case like this is you take your bolts, put them in, and you got mesh, and then you shoot shotcrete on it,
Right.
and that forms a hard layer to catch anything, kind of hold everything together. There's just a whole bunch of different ways they use in the real world to do this kind of thing. Yep, just like a post-stress cable, exactly. And they can do that and say, I've heard of 100-foot cable bolts when you're trying to like hold up the side of an open pit,
Yep.
so that you don't have to move another 3 million tons of rock.
Yep.
Yeah, it's worth the bolts.
Yep.
Freeways, things like that.
Right.
Where they
Roadside,
could-
yeah.
Where they
road
could
work.
stabilize it at a much steeper slope, it saves them a lot of material movement. Exactly. But our situation should be relatively straightforward. We might want to.
That looks fairly competent in there.
Yeah,
I
it,
mean,
it
that-
does.
Because when was that mined? Do you know?
I have no idea.
1880s, 1890s.
It could be as much as shut down in World War II. There's 3-inch, looks like about 3-inch steel pipe there for airline. So they were running air, and they were using wood rails. So that was cheap. You know, they were running on the cheap.
They had pneumatic drills already by 1900.
Oh yeah.
Though.
Yeah. So I can't really tell. There's nothing that I'm aware of that's time determinative there. Somebody who's really good might be able to tell how much corrosion was on the pipe or something. Say, oh, this has been around this long or whatever.
Usually
Well,
it's the
the
type of
nails-
nails you
The
find.
nails and bolts I've seen are definitely modern. They look like they're mostly post-World War.
Agreed. The nails, and there's lots of nails there. They look like what you buy at the hardware store.
Okay, then
The nails and bolts.
1920s or later it was
Yeah.
worked. So it could have been worked in the 30s or
It might have
40s.
stopped World War II. Don't know.
That could be.
Yeah, I did not see any bolts, nuts, nails, or hardware there that was earlier than what I would class as post-World War I. And I do have a pretty good eye for that. I can't narrow it down to a 10-year period, but I can narrow it down to,
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Lodak. Lead time to get the plant in operation. Well, permitting currently is impossible. Okay. As far as I can tell, nobody is getting any permits on federal land. Okay.
No.
So we have to keep our disturbance underground, which we can do, and then haul it off, which we can do. If we, this season, I would imagine just run the plant out there at the ranch. That way we're close to Helena, so if we need parts or anything else, we can do it. And it's not going to be running that long anyway. By the time we get to that point, we're looking, September-ish. I don't know what's going to happen with Eva when she's going to go in for surgery. That's going to take a lot of time. That's got priority. And so if we were to, when I design the mill and build it, it's something that I want to be able to set up in a day or two on site. If you were to just clear your site out and be ready to set it up, you could haul the stuff out there and park things, and within a day or so, you'd be ready to go, if that's what the question basically is. I don't like having to pour foundations or anything like that if I can possibly avoid it. Maximum mobility. And so that's kind of the plan. I don't know if we're ever going to be processing on site because, again, it's federal land. We do have access to a patented claim less than 2 miles line of sight away. The roads are Forest Service roads, but passable. As far as I know, I haven't driven between A and B, but the boss has. He had a dirt bike. He's good on a dirt bike.
Under the mining law, they have to give you a mill site.
Yeah, they have to process your permits, and they have, yeah, exactly.
It might take 10 years to get a mill site.
You sweet summer child. You actually think they're going to be paying attention to the mining law.
Yeah, they don't seem to care about any other
I think
mining.
in the future they're gonna.
In the future, sometime.
I think they're gonna.
I think in the future they may be too busy worrying about other things to care.
I think there's a change coming. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's coming.
I'm not sure which way it's going to go. It's either this is going to become complete non sequitur, or it'll become possible. That's why this year it's mainly the setup, design, and everything like that. That's kind of what our thought processes are. We've also claimed another couple locations that had some good historical data on them, on the assumption that in the future things will become easier to do.
Right.
If they're not, well, I'm too busy trying to get enough food to worry about it.
Right. Well, that's always a possibility.
Yeah.
That means it got real bad, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I guess it could.
It certainly could. You can't rule that out. But I'll say getting the ability to do non-toxic gold leaching and having mobile equipment to do it is a heck of a tool to have in your toolbox.
Oh, hell yes.
And so whether or not this actually turns a net profit in the long run is not as critical as paying all the capital costs to build the equipment.
Yeah.
And to get everyone trained up and stuff.
Once you have a mill facility, now you're capable of going.
Yeah. Exactly. And the boss is perfectly amenable to the idea of custom milling for people too. And setting up a larger mill site somewhere with the idea that not only milling his own ores, but other people's ores also. So we may wind up with flotation stuff for other ores that aren't ours. But okay, if you bring us enough ore, we'll do it. So that's kind of what we're working on. And I think that's pretty much where we're at in terms of the progress to date. Anyone have any other questions about that, or any questions about anything else at this point? It's still got a half an hour theoretically for Eva's tinfoil hat report. As far as I know, no, nobody's getting paid.
Well, you're under exploration. You're not under MSHA.
Yeah, we're
as long as you're in an exploration phase and you call it exploration,
and it's plausible that it might be exploration.
Right.
Yes.
No, you can do bulk testing, which could be actually quite big.
Yeah.
Under exploration.
Yeah.
And if you can keep it in that realm, you could do that for a number of years before they're going to force you into a mining permit situation.
Yeah. By the time we're doing that, we're probably going to have MSHA involved. Yeah. I would say so, but this, I mean, just what I've diagrammed here would be years in the future before we got to that at the kind of rates that we're looking at here. That's my thought.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I say as long as you keep it in a testing and exploration phase, it makes it a lot simpler. If there's no surface disturbance, it's my understanding that the BLM has no authority, basically. That must have been a steep side hill if you slid in on a D9. Either that or some wet, hard bedrock. Oh, well, let's see. That's what we're trying to define, Wolfman. But we're hoping to do all of it for less than $1,000 a ton. And I think that is a very plausible thing. This Eco Goldex stuff seems to be reasonably inexpensive. We're not having to use a lot of it or a lot of other chemicals. The extraction from solution is generally not terribly expensive. And as long as we're just screening dump,
you don't have the mining cost.
The mining cost is pretty cheap. We're talking $100 a ton, maybe, just labor.
Yeah, I was going to say it wouldn't exceed that.
Yeah. So
because you should theoretically be able to mine it for about $100 or $150 a ton.
Yeah.
If you once get into the, get everything,
get the infrastructure, get the right equipment.
Yeah, get the infrastructure put together.
Yeah.
A ton of rock is not that much rock.
This stuff may be soft enough to mine with demo hammer. No explosives needed.
Pretty cool.
And if so, that would be highly desirable.
Well, yeah,
because it makes your ground control a little easier. It certainly makes the permitting easier. Hopefully, at worst, we have to do things like Sierra blasters.
And that wouldn't be bad at all either.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. Nah, we're talking diesel pickup. Yeah, I mean, a diesel pickup with a 150-mile round trip, let's see, figuring 10 miles to the gallon, you're talking 15 gallons at $3 a gallon, $50 there. You're paying the guy at least twice that just to drive the truck, You could. So, again, you're looking at, say you pay the guy $100 a day just to drive, and he makes 2 trips a day, $50 in fuel each trip. That's $100. Another $100 for him. Again, you're looking at $200 for 2 tons. So your mining cost is $100 a ton. Your hauling cost is $100 a ton. And these are fairly modest. They could easily go higher, but even then, if you double it, you're still only $400 a ton.
Right. And
the milling cost, probably your single biggest cost there is going to be crushing and grinding.
Right.
Wear parts, fuel, stuff like that. MSHA may try and get involved at some point. I'm not disagreeing with that. But that's somewhere down the road. We try and keep it quiet, although we're on a live stream that goes around the world. But it's so small. I have a feeling that the regulatory agencies are going to be very busy in the near future, harassing more important people than us. That's my guess. You know, we shall see what we shall see. But you know, if I have to, I can hunker down. It's like you. You're not making much money right now, but you're surviving.
Nope. Just keep going.
Yep. So anyhow, these are the sort of things that we shall see. I mean, what would happen if the federal government just decided to invalidate all mining claims?
A civil war.
It could be, but I mean, it's not beyond the. I mean, they have shut down mines that had their final permits.
Oh yeah, I know.
So
well, look at the pipeline.
They
shut the pipeline down. You know?
I was exposed to a theory last week that I thought made a fair amount of sense, and I'll just put it out here quick. We don't want to discuss it too much, but the theory was the purpose is to start a civil war, to get us so mad that we do something violent that then they can say insurrection, call in the military, etc., etc.
Well, it's either that or they already know the economic collapse is coming and they don't know what to do about it anyway.
I don't know, but whatever it is,
you know, there's either way, it's not a good program. But
it doesn't seem to me that one should,
because they sure don't seem to be too concerned about the 2022. You know,
that is very concerning to me. They
don't seem to care.
Yeah, they don't seem to be playing politics as usual.
No.
They just, we don't care. So the idea of them trying to provoke us seems to make more sense than they're trying to honestly get their programs enacted and get along with us. You know, and if they don't get along with us, they know they're not going to win elections in the future. So I say, I don't know, but my assumption is that life is going to be so complicated in the near future that little podunk 1 or 2 man operation gold mines in the middle of Montana are going to be way down on their priority list. Could be, but we need to be very, very careful and not be violent.
Right.
Non-violent protest is okay, but we have to be extremely nonviolent. We have to give blood without being violent.
We have to do sit-ins.
Yep. And that sort of thing. But I say it's very, very frustrating, but we can't give them the excuse. Okay? Yeah, I understand, David. I think there's millions and millions of us feeling the exact same way, but now's not the time to start shooting. That's for sure. If we can keep it peaceful until the 2020 election and focus 2022 and focus all our energies on just making that election happen properly in terms of legit, I think we'll have Congress and we can do a lot of stuff. There was a state representative, I think, in Florida, Republican, says, I want to audit the 5 biggest counties in Florida. I want to audit the elections. And I think that's a great idea. Yep. First of all, it kind of gives a lie to the idea that we're trying to overturn the election because we won in Florida. Well, the 5 biggest counties, I have a feeling, are the ones that there will be significant fraud anyhow, which would be nice to get cleaned up.
Well, that's the thing. If you can expose it a little, then you can bring some light to it. And
then you can you can say, this is why we need voter ID, limited mail-in ballots, all this other stuff.
But,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's it. I don't know how these guys think they're going to win on a knockdown drag out. But
it won't be pretty.
That's why they have to have a plausible excuse to get the military and the police on their side. Notice how they spent a very great amount of effort getting rid of the patriots in the military
they're working
and
on it.
honest police, the ones who can't deal with a bunch of bullshit. The ones who can deal with bullshit will do whatever they're told for a paycheck.
Right.
That's fine. They can keep those. They're happy with those. Yeah. But anyhow, by the way, Andreas, are you a Schwendi there? Andreas is kind of interesting. There's no current active mining real close by. There's one about 6 miles away. And yeah, I agree, Ed. And they're doing, I believe, flotation. The mill that they have is not permitted for cyanide. They allowed that permit to expire, and of course,
shit.
Yeah, they were idiot. The person who owned the mill allowed it to expire. That was worth a lot of money. But if you got the GeoGoldex,
or a product,
or the clean mining stuff, maybe no big deal. Yeah. This stuff seems to work as fast or better than cyanide, and it's not terribly expensive. You know, Southwest Montana. What did you call it? South Central.
Here?
Yeah.
It's almost west central. I don't know.
Yeah. Helena,
South,
Three Forks,
probably considered southwest Montana.
Butte, that area there.
Yeah, we're in the Golden Triangle.
There's a lot of old mines here, but I don't know if any that are operating. I mean, Golden Sunlight was operating for years.
Yeah, they just kind of, I think they're still cleaning up down there, going to do their tailings ponds, aren't they? They're going to mine out
I think they're doing some reworking and stuff, and then even in Butte, they're looking at reopening.
Oh yeah, there's a lot going on in Butte again.
Yeah,
Butte Silver, there's some big stuff going on there.
Oh no. There's a guy, Discovery with Schwendi or something like that. He's from Switzerland. He's a nice guy, Andreas something or other. Might be Schwendi. I don't know. It's spelled with an I believe. And let's see. Let me YouTube. And let me see. He's a really nice. He does great video quality. I mean, he does great videography, so to speak. Discover with Schwendi, Schwendi. Okay, he's from Switzerland. And I say he's a. Let's see. What is a Schwendi, Andras? Andreas?
Yeah, you might not want to use that word no more.
Because I'm not. Let's say this is Swiss, which they use German too there, so it might be that Schwendi. So I say that's interesting.
Don't offend anybody.
Well, it could also be just there's a guy I talked to in Norway that
hey, I'm German.
He makes fun of the Swedes. The Swedes. They're like our crazy little brothers, sort of thing. I presume there's a lot of international rivalries. We have interstate here, like the Californicators and the left coast and stuff like that. I'm sure. But anyhow, let's say that Discover with Schwendi was he commented on one of my videos, suggested I might want to look at one of his, and I did. It was a long video. It was almost an hour, but the quality was literally like a Discovery Channel documentary. Yeah, absolutely. The video quality was just amazing, and it was the one thing that amazed me was he and a geologist were walking up a steep trail on a mountainside in the snow. The photographer was walking backwards up the trail, and keeping a nice steady shot of these guys as they're having a discussion for several minutes. Man, that photographer's good. The photographers, I don't think, get enough credit.
No.
Because, I mean, the talent is sitting there. They're the ones that, the Mike Rose and stuff like this.
Right. Yeah, the people
but the photographers got to go through everything they do. Somebody like this guy, he's walking backwards while the other guys are walking
sometimes
forward.
They have to do a lot of planning ahead so they could get the shots they want.
And then they've got to make the shot come off right. They
Right.
have to get the lighting right, and this and that and the other. And I don't think they get the credit that they ought to in these things sometimes, because the photographers, they go through heck sometimes. But anyhow, that's basically where we're at here in the Helena Three Forks Butte Triangle area. That's where we're focusing most of our stuff. And as I recall, it's a 65-mile trip from here to the mine. Okay.
So that's a pretty good haul.
So, I mean, it's a reasonable haul. But again, you can do 2 of those in one day.
Yeah, but if we
10-hour
once
day.
get to that point, you get a dump trailer hooked to the pickup truck and you bring 2 ton back or a ton and a half
Yeah, you
back.
can do that too.
Once you know that, okay, we know what the ore is, we got ore, then you start to build on that side.
And another thing you can do with waste too is when nobody's looking, you can put it in the holes in the dirt road too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, makes
Yeah,
good road
I
building
fixed-
material.
Yeah, up where I was up there, we fixed about a good 1.5 miles of road. We rebuilt the whole damn thing little by little.
No, not at all. It's just there was a particular guy named Andreas, and as you'll notice, there's only 21 people watching. So, the chances of another Andreas, it's plausible, but it was also entirely possible that it was
No offense.
Andreas Schwendi there, and he knows we have these live streams, although he probably won't come on, if he does at all, until more like 9 o'clock, because it's early morning where he's at. Yeah. Not going to make a documentary per se. There will be videos as we go along this whole thing. This summer, it's primarily going to be about the leaching, but considering there's very, very little leaching information on the internet right now,
I don't know if there's virtually any.
I don't know if anyone that's actually, getting especially into the details. But
3 a.m. there.
Yeah. See, that's what I was saying. See, that's why, Andreas said, it's like, by the time we're done, it's like 6 o'clock his time. And so he
Got to get up really early to watch us.
Yeah, exactly. Or stay up late.
Stay up late.
Thank you for staying up late, Andreas.
Really, yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah. And so, especially with this new chemical, this Eco Gold X, the basic concept of a thio-complex gold lixivant, a chemical that dissolves gold, has been around a while, but they seem, because cyanide has become politically unpopular, it's kind of forced them, and and so now they've done work on the thio solutions, and it's getting to the point where it seems reasonably cost effective. Now, the chemical cost is not nearly as critical for a micro scale operation as it is for a big operation. We don't worry too much about saving $2 or $3 a ton, because we better make a whole lot more than that before we even consider doing it. And as such, the additional cost of, let's say the chemical cost is $10 a ton.
Right.
I don't care.
No, not if you have value. If you're your dollars are there. And so that's
I think it's going to be a very, very useful set of videos, especially as I'm going into the details of how do you figure out what to do. It's one thing if somebody says, here's our ore and this is what we do to it.
Mhm.
But how did they decide they wanted to do that to it? And how do they know that that's the best way to deal with it? Well, that's what I'm doing.
Right.
And
testing
taking you
procedure.
along for the ride here. And, Chris is out there hooking them up, huh? Okay. That doesn't surprise me a bit. I would be quite surprised if Chris didn't have a lot of contacts. And I say, so this is why I'm going into so much detail too, in terms of grind sizes and bottle rolls and this and that and the other. Ooh, cooking shrimp, huh?
Sounds good.
I can almost smell it from here. But and that's why, is because I want you guys to have a more thorough understanding of the basic concepts, so that if you run into a situation yourself, you can kind of figure it out yourself if you need to, you know? This damn smoke is tickling my throat.
The last few days I've felt it too. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, I hate to
Between the heat
take a
and
little
the smoke.
cough syrup, because then I'll be going,
Yeah.
wind up with my head
asleep.
in your lap, and then everyone going, wait a minute, that's not this kind of video. That's not what I wanted to see. Yeah. But anyhow, so that's the idea, is to show you all the stages in the process so that you understand how to find the answers for yourself. And you may not remember it, but you can always refer back to the videos.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that will help a lot of people. And this also theoretically applies in third world countries too. As you guys have noticed, we never know who's going to log in from where around here. You know, last week was Mauritania, wasn't it? I believe.
Yep.
And we've had Ecuador and Tanzania and all kinds of stuff. And especially the ones in Africa that have been asking me, well, how do I do cyanide leaching? It would be nice to give them a much safer, more environmentally friendly alternative
Yep.
to cyanide leaching that would work fairly simply. And so I want it to be simple for me. I mean, I big fan of simplicity.
Well, you want it simple. I don't care if you're placer mining or hard rock mining. You want it as simple as it can be. But it doesn't always come out that way. You have to complicate things, to a certain level all the time because of a certain process you need to do or whatever. But ideally, yes, if the simpler you can keep it, the more economical, and you're going to show a profit sooner.
Yeah. And the other thing is,
5 or 10 minutes here, guys.
I've seen some placer operations where they complicated to the point that they were broke before they ever got any gold out of the ground.
I saw,
and it was so overcomplicated in what they thought was there, and they never had done the testing. So basically they were just running on hope.
They've already got their stuff, David. They're that may be the original supplier of this stuff. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you never know. Or one of the products in it.
Well, I don't know about your people. Were they college professors or something?
My people?
The ones that overcomplicated that thing?
Oh, probably, yeah. Overeducated, I would not doubt it.
Because I knew one that they...
But the other thing is they got money. You get money, or you find an investor, somebody's willing to back you, and then you run out and you spend all the money. And it's like, we'll back up the wagon here a minute, because first you want to do enough testing to say, okay, this is the process to get, just like you're doing here, this is the process to get the gold out of this material.
Well,
and we're only going to need this, and this. And then, don't overcomplicate it by buying somebody's dream.
Yeah, I saw one, the King of Arizona mine. They spent $3 million, and When they were all done, aside from being more complicated than necessary by far, they found out that they needed 50 tons an hour to break even.
Right. Well, that's
and they only had
thing,
water enough for 10 tons an hour.
Well, exactly.
And they assumed that the government would allow them to reopen the old well in the middle of the Kofa Wildlife Refuge and allow them to pump the water to the mine.
Well, you know what assume means.
Yeah,
so
it means $3 million down the drain.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, whether it's a small placer, even if you can show that you can get the gold out with a high banker and a shovel and prove that, yep, there's enough gold there to step this up to another level, then you accordingly move equipment in that's scalable, to the next level, and you do it with a budget. So you know that, okay, if we do this and we spend this much money, we have to have, in my case, $10 a yard out of the material at a minimum just to break even for the cost of bringing in equipment. And you build from that.
Yeah. Andreas, thio refers to sulfur chemically, and thiosulfate is basically where a sulfate which has had one of the oxygens replaced with a sulfur to create a thiosulfate ion. Now, in bioleaching, they use a bacteria called Thiobacillus ferroxidans, which digests iron oxide. It adds iron sulfide. It takes pyrite, adds oxygen, and gets energy from that reaction. And the bioleaching is usually done to dissolve the sulfide minerals in ores by using the bacteria to literally eat them. And in that case, it can be used to release, say, gold in pyrite is one of the things they've tried bioleaching for. But in this case, we're using like ammonium thiosulfate or calcium thiosulfate chemical that will directly dissolve the gold instead of sodium cyanide, which was the old standard to dissolve gold. It worked fine, but it's toxic, and they say politically it's just not possible in many cases. Like in Montana, it's illegal to use cyanide.
Right.
So we simply can't do it. And so when I say the thio complex, I mean the gold thiosulfate complex as opposed to the gold cyanide complex or the gold chloride complex. But that's what I mean. The thio comes from sulfur, and that's why it sounds very, very similar because they're both involving sulfur there.
Actually, Wolfman, your daily running costs are actually almost a fixed cost once you're operational. I mean, you have estimated costs, but once you kind of know that each guy on the crew or whatever, your daily labor cost is this, your daily fuel cost is pretty fixed normally. You're running pumps and engines and whatever, excavator, dump truck, payloader, dozer. Those are pretty fixed costs actually for every hour that they operate. So where you have your bottlenecks is actually in the yardage you can run through a plant depending on the material you're running, and the scale of the plant or where your bottlenecks in your system are. That's where there's some unknowns until you've been able to run enough material to dial everything in. And once you're at fixed costs, pretty much, if you get into, let's just say, better gold or better material, that's really icing on the cake because you're already covering your daily expense costs.
Jill Sawyer once said that the regular stuff's your bread and butter, the rest is the marmalade.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you hit pockets that are, much better values, and that's just icing on the cake. It is. It's just the better part of it because now your fixed costs and your original mobilization costs are covered.
Okay.
Now you can make money, and that means even if you're leasing like we do, we lease property. I've leased property. And if I'm leasing, in a lot of cases, once we break that threshold of our original mobilization costs and get into production, looking at production, if we break past a certain amount of ounces per day or whatever per month, we can increase the payout to the landowner also by a percentage or 2%, 2%. And they're always happy by, us doing that, because it's like, holy crap, that way everybody's making money if you're making money. But, initially you're the one taking the risk to go in and spend the time and effort to test, just like Keith's doing. You got to spend all this time and effort to find it first. So if you're going to lease ground, you definitely want to work a deal that you're protected, that the minute you find it and can prove that it's, let's just say this is 2 ounces per ton, the minute you can prove that and everything on paper, you don't want the landowner to go say, oh, well, my nephew's going to mine it now. You have to get a locked-in contract for exploration leading to a mining contract. And I've got copies of stuff like that if anybody's interested.
Sports, that sounds exactly like what we're doing here, and could very easily just translate directly over. So yeah, keep in touch, keep an eye on what we're doing, etc. And sounds good. By the way, are you in some place where it doesn't snow all over the place in the winter?
Over here in the Elkhorns.
Sports?
Yeah, isn't he?
I don't think that's the guy we're talking about. That guy that I'm thinking about was
in Colorado.
had 2 names.
No.
Yeah. Let's see. And gold and silver considered heavy metals. Yes, they do have a certain toxicity. They don't dissolve real well, but I mean, for example, people take colloidal silver to kill bacteria.
Yeah. Well,
so
gold can carry arsenic.
Yeah. Well, say mercury, arsenic, lead, those are your typical heavy metals, but gold and silver are also heavy metals. They're not usually considered to be dangerous. South of you, quite a ways, or still in Montana, sports? And so it never gets to be a problem because they never get in such, if they're in such concentrations, they're toxic, they're mineable. If there's that much in the water, we just, they'd be extracting it directly out of the water.
Different. Okay.
We would all be rich.
Yep. That's something that might work out well during this winter sports. So yeah, definitely keep in contact at appropriate times, because this winter, we get locked in up here. There's not much we can do. So that might work out well. Okay, are you about ready, little one?
I'm almost ready here. I'm just negotiating another work contract.
Almost.
I'm sorry, people. I am in high demand as a writer at the moment. Actually, I'm getting roped into a small business startup, so I'm going to be negotiating now.
She's a really good wordsmith. She wrote something the other day to a gentleman who's, I don't know if he had cancer or his mother had cancer.
Mother.
And she wrote something that was just really, really beautiful. It was amazing. Maybe if you guys ask, she might read that to you. I don't know.
I'd have to find it again.
So anyhow.
Give me 2 minutes.
David Villa is getting all excited.
Yeah, he's pacing.
I hate to say it, but keep your pants on, David.
Well, he's on the internet. I'd never know anyway. I will be right there, people.
Any other questions? Mining questions?
I better not ask anything, because someone will start a thread and then we'll have to interrupt it here. But anyhow, how many we got? We got 28 now. Okay. So for those who are coming in late, here's the recoveries. The upper curve is finely ground ore. The lower curve was not so finely ground ore. As you can see, the fine grind makes a big difference. And so it also, that the lower curve, we did some checking with various solution thing, mainly, changing the lime. And we found out we do have to have some lime. It's kind of a shame, but you can't get by without it. But we're going to see if lime might work a little bit better, because it may not cause as much cloudiness. Well, that would be nice. I'd like to know more about that too, Lito.
Yeah. Well, someday maybe.
It might be at the bottom of that decline where my 2-pound hammer currently resides.
Someday
you don't know about that
yet. I heard something on the video about it, or somebody's comment about it. Maybe it was in the comments.
It was in the comments.
There goes the hammer.
Yeah, Chris said something or whatever, and I said,
might have been.
That's the hammer that's sitting at the bottom of the decline right now. Yeah, it was so annoying. When you're working by yourself, you have to be extremely careful.
Yep, methodical.
And there was a decline that I was exploring. It looked quite interesting. And I was 40 feet down from surface, and below me at about 50 feet, I could see that it browed over a little bit. Now, I don't know if you've ever been hanging from a rope.
Oh, yes.
What happens when you go over a brow like that?
You have a hell of a time coming back over it.
Exactly. It can be real difficult, especially if it's undercut.
Yeah. There's nothing to get your feet against or anything. So to get over that, and it may only be that much, but to get over it, it's damn hard.
Because the rope is tight on top. You can't get your stuff above it.
Yep.
And so it was one of those things I looked at. I was up on a hill. Eva wasn't with me because it was too high for her to get to. I'm by myself. If anything happens and I can't get back over it, I'm going to be sitting there a long time. Eva's just going to be sitting there wondering what happened to me eventually.
No. Eva would start walking up the hill. I'd get there 6 hours later, but
I said a long time. And then might have to call rescue in.
Yeah,
all because
mine rescue shows up.
All because I didn't have
Shaw and
an extra person with me. If I had a safety person with me, I wouldn't have worried about it.
The hat is in the house.
Okay, the tinfoil hat goddess has arrived.
We'll turn it over to her.
Yeah, sorry, I just kind of got distracted. I'm talking to somebody who is working on a business startup, and of course, like most young people who is thinking of a business startup, he had not thought about any of the things that actually go into a business. So I'm going to help the dude out. I'm going to help the dude out. I told him I'm easy. I'm totally negotiable in terms of salary. You can pay me in gourmet food. Hey. I like gourmet food, So, in the mining world this week, I have not heard anything recently about the eco-terrorist that is probably going to be running the BLM, but I've been deliberately avoiding the news because the news has been getting increasingly weird. You may have noticed that Lord Malarkey is relatively non-compost mentis these days when he's out and about talking to reporters. The other day it really did sound like he said he wiped his butt, but I'm sure that's not what he actually said. Could possibly have been telling that to reporters while laughing on his way to a helicopter. I hope not anyway. Yeah, smoking, I'll tell you. I got lucky this week when we went to our local Ace Hardware, and I got some BHA-free lids, the pure lids, and they are the right size. I have been told by scientifical type canners that they do work the same, but they were a whole lot more expensive, and it's really hard to find lids here. I hear up in Canada they can find plenty of them. Go figure. And in other parts of the country, they're showing up randomly. Our Walmart had tons of great jars, mostly straight mouth, mostly standard mouth, but some wide mouths, but they had no lids. You know. Lido Dan Hurd is a really cool Canadian prospector. He has these really nice claims up there on the Fraser River and a few other places. He gets nice gold and this really pretty ocean agate. Gorgeous stones. Thank you very much, Melinda. I could certainly use all the healing energy I can get these days. So there has been some stuff out in mining this week. The copper price is the highest it's been in 6 weeks because the flooding in China is raising supply concerns. Copper prices jumped on Monday as floods in China sparked demand hopes at a time when inventories are falling. Copper for delivery in September rose 4.5% from Friday's settlement price, touching $4.60 a pound midday Monday on the COMEX market. Benchmark copper on the London Metal Exchange was up 0.9% at $9,604.50 per ton in official trading, which is not bad. Floods in central China, especially in the industrial and transport hub city of Zhengzhou in Henan province, have raised supply concerns and demand for rebuilding damaged infrastructure. Flooding has caused at least $10 billion in damage, according to the state media, which means it's a whole lot more. They're having a real serious pig problem, which means our pork problem is about to get real serious because guess what? China owns 3/4 of the United States pork food supply chain. So you can bet that a lot of the pork that would have been going into our grocery stores is now going to be heading straight over to Panda Land. Good luck with that idea. Don't buy Smithfield pork products if you don't want to buy from Panda Land. A Singapore-based trader said the market was pricing in disruptions to output from floods in Henan and demand for reconstruction. Copper prices have been advancing after China revealed it will release fewer metal reserves than expected. China will sell another 30,000 tons of copper, 90,000 tons of aluminum, and 50,000 tons of zinc at auction from state reserves on July 29th. This auction will mark the second sale this month as the government aims to rein in skyrocketing commodity prices. It is slightly less than the market expected, but it should be priced in already as it's pretty well flagged. So that is an interesting thing. And copper producers are currently paying the price for their COVID lockdowns and decreases in production around the world right now because a lot of them can't get back all of their employees. A lot of them also can't ramp all the way up to 100% capacity again, in part because COVID nonsense is still going on in some places. And there are sporadic fuel shortages happening everywhere. This is not only impacting shipping in terms of rail and semis, it's also impacting aviation fuel for fighting all the fires going on right now. And it's impacting fuel for mining operations because apparently those really, really big dump trucks they have get like gallons per mile instead of miles per gallon, which is kind of sad and depressing.
I've seen some with 1,800-gallon fuel tanks.
Yeah, well, they look pretty darn big in the pictures, I can tell you that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And in other news, there's no serious details out on the issue yet, but apparently Tesla has announced that they're going to hold back on the release of their Tesla semis for some unaccountable reason, which we may hear about going forward. There's probably going to be more details. I am no longer trusting the stated narrative as it comes out, as soon as it comes out, because lately the stated narrative has turned out to be inaccurate 2 or 3 days later. So I'm going to wait 3 or 4 days before I start digging into why Tesla is deciding to curtail and scale back their estimations on when their new electric semis are going to rock our world. I don't think their semis will rock our world anyway. No offense on Tesla, but yeah, fossil fuels are still a thing, people. Now, when it comes to Bitcoin, etc., at the moment, Bitcoin these days is running around 40,000, but a lot of people are looking more closely at Ethereum, and I don't blame them for this. The crypto rally has taken Bitcoin above 40,000 for the first time since June, but Ethereum might be the cryptocurrency to watch as Bloomberg Intelligence sees it outperforming Bitcoin going forward. Bitcoin was up nearly 16% on the day after it briefly traded at a daily high of 40,539. The rally coincided with short sellers abandoning their positions and a new interest in Bitcoin following reports Amazon could get involved in crypto. Amazon has since walked that back. They're not taking crypto yet this year. So the rally was attributed to both short covering, but also the ongoing speculation about Amazon's potential involvement in the crypto sector. The correlation with risk and or gold has fallen completely away as long as it's 30 to 40,000 range bound, is what they believe. The Amazon speculation started after reports cited a job posting from the retail giant which said it was looking for a digital currency and blockchain product lead. We're inspired by the innovation happening in the cryptocurrency space and are exploring what this could look like on Amazon, a company spokesman told CoinDesk last week. We believe the future will be built on new technologies that enable modern, fast, and inexpensive payments and hope that to bring that to future Amazon customers as soon as possible. This, of course, created a lot of excitement. Not that I pay much attention to Amazon. Ethereum also posted impressive gains in this crypto rally, last trading at 2,319, up nearly 8% on the day after hitting a high of $2,431. Wow. I think I ought to start looking around and trying to find that Ethereum wallet I lost a while ago, because that had about a quarter of an Ethereum in it. I'll have to start looking for that again. You know how it is. You get a wallet, you find a wallet, you put things in the wallet that you got for free, and then you forget where the wallet is. It's a thing, at least for me. And while most of the attention is still being devoted to Bitcoin, Bloomberg Intelligence is pointing out Ethereum can't be overlooked, projecting prices to resume their rally to 4,000. Ethereum has been outperforming Bitcoin for about 2 years, and the aftermath of the B-Word conference, we expect more of the same. Our key takeaway from the July 21st event, featuring a panel with Elon Musk, Cathie Wood, and Jack Dorsey, was Musk's acknowledgement that the number 2 crypto is among his holdings. It's not new that Bitcoin's global adaptation is in its early days, with an upward trajectory that's gaining momentum. Less known is Ethereum is beating out competitors, and its rising status as the go-to platform for the digitization of finance and money infrastructure, said Bloomberg Intelligence senior commodity strategist Michael McGlone. The number 2 crypto is building a base around 2,000, and Bitcoin is doing similar at just above 30,000. We see probabilities tilted more toward price appreciation resumption, and for Ethereum to gravitate to 4,000. What makes Ethereum so attractive is its use cases in the crypto space, with the currency carving itself out as the go-to crypto platform when it comes to disruptive innovation in the finance sphere. It's really useful in smart contracts, by the way. The most widely traded crypto asset, Tether, is a primary use case for Ethereum and supports the number 2 crypto's rising price. Dipping to the lower end of the range at about 50 billion, the 30-day average volume for the world's benchmark digital dollar is more than 2 times that of Bitcoin and in an upward trajectory. Unless innovation and related digitalization trends reverse, demand for and the price of Ethereum may keep rising. Uniswap is the world's largest decentralized exchange and operates on the Ethereum blockchain. Uniswap volume is about that of Coinbase. Coinbase is really good, by the way. However, one thing to keep an eye on is the Ethereum universe developments as new regulations and probes that could impact further expansion. For example, the U.S. Department of Justice is now looking at whether Tether's executives committed bank fraud when they established the digital token in 2014. Tether routinely has open dialogue with law enforcement agencies, including the DOJ, as part of our commitment to cooperation and transparency, the company said in a statement. It is business as usual at Tether, and we remain focused on how best to serve the needs of our customers. So the DOJ is at it again. Speaking of the DOJ, our various federal government agencies are doing their typical agency things. Lord Malarkey is still dancing around the non-importance of our current inflationary spiral, as is Madam Yellen. The DOJ has been opening up more investigations in general into altcoins, tokens, and cryptocurrencies, because Fedcoin and now Britcoin and other government-backed electronic securities and instruments are going to be coming into play. And this is all part of that great move to get us to give up our nice little pieces of paper with dead presidents on them, which is not happening as far as I'm concerned. I will pick up a penny on the sidewalk, okay, people? No. We do not want anything that is not cash. That's just not acceptable.
Excuse me. Damn forest fires.
Yeah, you're excused. Don't do it again. But that's where we are in Bitcoin these days. And there is a whole lot of back and forth going on as to the price of gold, the price of silver, the price of gold, the price of silver, and what is going on in the market. Most of the people I know that used to play in the market no longer play in the market. They decided the market is not going to be playing well with people going forward, so they got their money out, which I absolutely agree with. I liquidated my last remaining share a while ago. Now, in the tinfoil hat realm of things, on Zero Hedge is the most terrifying map in the world. You may not be able to see it on your screen, but you can go to Zero Hedge and look at the most terrifying map in the world. This map, which you cannot see very well, the orange area shows countries in 2000 that traded primarily with China versus countries in 2000 that traded with primarily the United States. Now, that was in 2000. 20 years later, this is where we are. There, if you want to hold that up there and show people just how bad it is getting. Yeah. In other words, the orange represents countries who do the majority of their trading with Panda Land. You may have noticed the map has gotten depressingly orange in the last 20 years, people. This is not good, okay? This is really, really not good at all, especially not since Xi over there managed to abolish the two-term limit for his presidency. 2,959 votes to 2 or 3 people who abstained. That's how much the people love Xi. The 2 or 3 who abstained have kind of become very silent of late. No idea why. And once he did that, he had his name enshrined in their national constitution. That's pretty serious. And he also had that anti-corruption purge a few years ago, which was his own secret police purging people that happened not to agree with Xi's vision for Pandaland. So we have a serious trade imbalance going on here, because we now have China as a nation has basically a stranglehold on the World Health Organization, which has been known for some time. China as a nation with their allies and trading partners have a stranglehold on the terrorist organization known as the United Nations, and they have had for some time. And it should be noted that Lord Malarkey and company have decided that we need to call in the United Nations to determine just how much of a racist country we are ahead of 2022, by the way. And China also has an ever-strengthening stranglehold on world supply chains, including owning a hell of a lot of America's critical infrastructure, which is not good. At least one or two critters in Congress lately decided to bring up the fact that maybe it's a bad idea to let foreign powers buy our critical infrastructure. Not that anybody is going to pay attention to them, of course, because that ship sailed a long, long time ago. But it has been brought up, so hopefully, as things go forward, there will be some changes in that regard. Beyond that, there really isn't much we can do about the situation at the moment because our own government is very much cahooting with Pandaland and Pandaland's various people. They're very good at cahooting. I'm sure that you probably have noticed this. A few other little tidbits in the news from Zero Hedge that we won't go into, but they're interesting if you want to go check them out. Afghan civilian casualties hitting record highs amid massive Taliban gains. There was a freak sandstorm that caused a 22-car pileup in Utah somewhere. That is very freak looking from the pictures, at least. And Senator Barbara Boxer, who's 80 years old, by the way. Can you believe that? She's even older than Lord Malarkey. Got mugged in Oakland. Yes, a senator. A sitting senator who is 80 years old and doesn't. I'm about to look at the article. A sitting senator who's 80 years old and thanks to the marvels of plastic surgery, Botox, and maybe even adrenochrome, doesn't look a day over 60. Got herself mugged in Oakland. An assailant pushed her, stole her cell phone, and jumped into a waiting car. The 80-year-old's Twitter account announced the news later in the day, adding, "Boxer is thankful she was not seriously injured." Earlier today, former Senator Barbara Boxer was assaulted in the Jack London Square neighborhood of Oakland. The assailant pushed her in the back, stole her cell phone, and jumped in a waiting car. She is thankful she's not seriously injured. The mugging comes weeks after an NBC Bay Area news crew was held up by two armed men who demanded their equipment, only to leave without stealing any equipment after a good guy with a gun, the news crew's security guard, ordered the would-be robbers to leave. Earlier in the month, Oakland police announced an investigation into two similar incidents that were caught on camera, one in which two women were jumped by two suspects wearing hoodies, and a similar incident in which two men in hoodies pulled the same routine on an elderly man holding a cane while standing in front of the Chinese Independent Baptist Church and pistol whipped him. So, yeah. Things seem to be getting a little bit bizarre in certain parts of California. And no offense to our dear friends who are in California, since you are being silly enough to not want to leave California, I hope the bizarre does not get close to you. But I hope that the bizarre stays within your state, because some of us like to live in low crime, sane areas of the country. And when Californians leave, it usually isn't the nice, solid, conservative ones abandoning ship. It's usually the ones that do things like this. So, if you happen to still live in the People's Republic of California, it might be a good idea to consider decamping, because things are getting extraordinarily strange over there of late. Not that they aren't getting strange elsewhere too, but they're getting extraordinarily strange over there of late. And unfortunately, there are so many crazy people per capita in the state that you never know what's going to happen. So this is a good time for other people to consider the wisdom of abandoning sinking ships like California, parts of Arizona, parts of Illinois, etc. Any place in Oregon, since Oregon currently has the largest wildfire in the entire country going right now, and getting someplace sane. Because when the crazy people finally find us, we're going to need some help to keep them from coming in. And we would always like more help.
We have a queen size mattress in the attic in the Beluga trailer there, Chris.
Chris, if you really want to move, we will roll out a red carpet as wide as I-15. We will find you a wonderful, wonderful place where you can do your mad scientist type stuff. I'm sure we can find one.
Eco-mic collapse?
Economic.
Yeah. What's mic mean?
I think the word was supposed to be economic collapse,
I see.
And it became that instead. Wow, flash floods in Cedar City. Hadn't heard about those ones yet, Mr. Lodak. Stay safe. How big is the gun cabinet? David, the gun cabinet was as Big Sky Country until it got lost in a tragic boating accident.
Yeah.
It's, R.I.P.
You might want to tell them about your hand.
Oh, you may notice. Silly me. A random rock decided it was going to roll under my foot when I was stepping someplace the other day, and I did not correct my balance hard enough. Luckily, I was wearing a pair of work gloves, so I only kind of got mildly emulsified skin, and it doesn't even hurt right now. So that's how that's going.
Yeah, luckily it was very clean, but she peeled off about 1 square inch of skin on the heel of her hand there.
Mr. Virtue, my condolences. I cannot imagine why anyone would willingly be in Silicon Valley. I mean, that's just not good, As to the economic collapse, yeah, there has been some talk about the economic collapse. The current line as of yesterday seemed to be still along the lines of inflation isn't something we really need to worry about, but we can easily control it, and it's going to go away as soon as we pass a $6 trillion infrastructure budget. Now, this infrastructure budget that is still going back and forth, while Lord Malarkey vigorously defends filibusters and says he's doing great bipartisan work in making history, has gone everywhere in value from 0.96 trillion to 9 trillion. And the funny thing about it is, when you take a look at the actual bill numbers that they're discussing, believe it or not, they are discussing an infrastructure bill that actually hasn't been written yet. Right now, they're just discussing a number. The actual paperwork on this number is still floating around in the amorphous ether of Congress under various resolution numbers and House bills, etc. Nothing has coalesced into a body of legislation that can actually be debated, even though they are talking about using reconciliation on this infrastructure bill that has not been written yet.
I was watching a news report today where a congressman was saying he voted against it because there's blank pages in it.
Yes.
It hasn't even been filled in yet.
Exactly. There are blank pages in it. And I think this is probably one of the most amazing genius tactics I have ever heard from coming out of DC. Picture the scene. You pass a $6 trillion infrastructure bill that just has a title and blank pages. That means anything goes. I mean, this is sheer genius if they can pull it off. Because this will be the first time they have ever written a law that we cannot prove is not constitutional because it's not written down. It's only what you say it is at the moment. This is going to be, if they can actually manage to pass a law that has any blank pieces of paper in it that don't say in the middle, this page left intentionally blank, then they have crossed an entire new frontier, a new event horizon into the black hole of ever-expanding government lunacy. So I am very curious about whether this is actually going to fly, because it is nice to know that there are one or two voices of reason that are like, well, shouldn't we at least write it down before we vote yes on it? But I just don't know how long they're going to hold out against the rest of the nuts. And I don't know whether the rest of the nuts will be able to actually make a case that will appeal to their self-interest enough that they can change their minds, because this is always a possibility with these people. It is truly amazing the mental gymnastics that they can go through to land in a position where they would even be discussing something that wasn't written down in the first place. This is staggering. Even when you think about the nature of these uniparty kleptocrats in DC. This is beyond anything they've come up with before. I'm quite truly rather boggled and slightly impressed that they have actually managed to take it to this point, and they're doing it with a straight face.
You got to pass the bill to find out what's in it to a whole different level.
Absolutely. You have to pass the bill to know what's in it on steroids. I agree, Argonaut. Blank checks here. Yep. And yes, Robert, the Great Reset is in order here. Yeah, vote the money and trust the Congress critters. That's how we got in this mess in the first place.
By the way, I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but today on the video that I posted, when I accidentally apparently hit closed captions. Now, I don't close caption anything, right? But it was doing closed captioning, and it was doing a pretty good job on my speech and turning it into text. So just letting you know, it can do that.
We are going to be keeping an eye on the situation of the, well, whether it's the third stimulus bill, the Save America plan, the Build Back Better plan, the infrastructure bill, or whatever they're calling it tomorrow. We're going to be keeping an eye on it, and I will be very curious to see how many people continue to vote it down while there's stuff not in it. And that would be very interesting, because I don't trust them. I really don't. And I'm sorry that I have to say that. I'm sure that you are all considering me a deplorable cynic right now, and you're probably very, very disappointed in my lack of faith in our feral government. But no, they're up to something even hinkier than usual right now. And that, my friends, is one of the many reasons that I am going to be designing yet another tinfoil hat, because these people are just, they're going above and beyond. And I did not think that was possible. So I need to reassess my opinion as to just how depraved the kleptocrats in Washington are. Because I was apparently giving them too much credit for still being somewhat occasionally reasonable people. So I'm revising my opinion on this. But I will turn this back over to the guys, and everybody have a good week. Remember several things. Public service announcement. Arizona unquestionably sucks rocks. Buy GameStop, hold GameStop, hold on to your crypto if you have it. Get a hold of any silver or gold you can get your hands on. Good luck with that. And if you do see actual official canning jar lids in your area in stores, because anybody out there who's planning to can, don't buy them online. Online right now is 90% counterfeits. Oh, it's awful. I mean, like 200 new websites have popped up that look all official and stuff that are not, that are selling counterfeits.
What are you doing, Keith?
One of my contacts just, he started a conversation at the wrong moment. So I'm trying to tell him, going to live stream. REAMN.
All right.
Take it over, Jim.
I don't even know where to go tonight. I didn't even think of a subject or anything to jump on tonight.
Well,
They were slide in here.
we're doing pretty good on the questions today. She should do okay, Melinda. It was because she was wearing a glove, it was very clean. There was no dirt in the wound at all. So we were able to just put some ointment and a dressing on it. And what you see there is basically just covering. We haven't even removed it at this point because it's not hurting her. So she should be okay. Lots of people saying thank you and take care and stuff like that, little one. Yep. Yeah, luckily she also did it close to me, so I was actually in camp. I'd done one set of stuff and was resting. She was coming down the hill there and slipped 50 feet from the bago.
No.
And so I was able to get her to the camp and get the first aid kit out and deal with it. Well, we found out we were short a couple things in the first aid kit, so we got those replenishment supplies
make
there.
a list and go get them.
Yep. So anyhow, yeah, counterfeit canning lids. Can you believe it? Yeah, everything.
Yeah, Ball got so far behind that they started counterfeiting them. Anything to make a buck, I guess.
Chinese can counterfeit anything quick.
Oh yeah.
They're very good at that. Anyhow, so I get over here. The whole situation has me a bit flummoxed in terms of the society in general. I am very glad I'm up here in Montana now instead of down in Arizona, and I'm having a good time. With the exception of Eva's health issues, I'd be having a great time. Jim here has been a lot of help too, and so is Chris. But we'll be getting the leaching going as quickly as possible, and you guys can watch along. Don't forget, if you have a specific question, you can always just put it in the comments, because I like having a small channel. I mean, right now we got 25 people watching, and that's enough where we get some questions and stuff, but it's not so many that it becomes impersonal and you can't answer all the questions and stuff like that. So I'm very comfortable with the size of everything right now. And let's say we'll try and get that leaching thing, and if it does work well, and so far it is, it's going to be very, very useful. The next stage in the testing is going to run roughly 50-pound batches, agitation leaching for at least 6 hours. So at that rate wouldn't be very much, but the next step up will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 500 pounds an hour. My 6-inch impact mill can run, I don't know, probably 150, nice and steady. Boss has a Stutenroth mill that'll do a lot more than that, but I'm not sure how fine a grind it'll get. So we may have some issues with that we would have to address. But I'd say the next stage is 50 to 100 pounds a day. The next stage is going to be like a ton a day. And then after that, we could probably produce from the dumps a couple tons a day. But we run out fairly quickly.
And I'm guessing that by the end of this summer, we'll have about 1 or 2 ton a day milling capacity. And next season, we'll be looking at going into the mining end to provide that. If the rock remains reasonably easy to take out with a demo hammer, that shouldn't be a problem. I mean, even in reasonably hard rock, you can break 500 pounds an hour with that Hilti.
It is a big game changer, smoking.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that,
Thank you, Melinda.
Somebody's done enough chemistry and research to bring it to this point, it is a pretty neat step.
Badruddin, I don't think that the conventional solar and wind power are going to be able to power a civilization effectively. I think you could go to nuclear power. There's some various nuclear options that are much safer and simpler than what they're are currently online.
Clean, yeah.
But I don't think that what they call renewables really stand a chance. And I don't think electric vehicles make a lot of sense with the current state of battery technology. And you still got to generate the electricity somewhere with something. That's what all of these things seem to forget, is that an electric car means remote pollution. It doesn't mean no pollution. It just means the power plant in the other state is polluting, not your car. You know?
Well, the mining is the same way. You know, all the amount of minerals that need to come out of the ground in the near future if they want their dream is almost impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be handing out permits down here on the corner for mining, and it isn't going to solve the shortage that we would see if they really, I mean, just if you look at just the battery, the minerals they want just for batteries right now, there is no way.
Yeah, helium-3 fusion, possibly sometime in the future.
Hydrogen would be a better way to go. But
well, helium-3, he's talking about fusion.
Yeah, right.
As far as helium-3 actually fuses easier than hydrogen.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that the cold fusion was actually showing some real results of some sorts, and I don't know what the state of it is now, but I do know that Mitsubishi Heavy Industries was getting involved, and I don't think they're idiots. So there's something going on there. Harness ocean currents. Yes, there is potential there. I think biofouling is, again, the biggest problem of anything you put in the ocean. Night, Mr. Lodak.
Yeah, we'll see you later.
Take care. And that's entirely possible, Roberts.
Yeah,
you too, David.
That's what they want.
Good night. But I think that we can come up with good solutions to our problems if we're allowed to actually work the solutions and not decide what the solution must be and then work towards it. Kind of like that hydrogen fusion stuff. Yeah, we were going to have it 20 years from now, 50 years ago. And that's one of the big issues, is you start with reality and work to a solution, not start with a solution and then try and bend reality to it. It doesn't work that. Huh. I've never heard about that, Jeff. Is there a video of anything? Mr. Ludek says good night, Eva.
Good night.
I know that gentleman in Ecuador who's got like, I forget what the three, JKD jungle prospecting or something. He says he uses a very steep sluice too for fine gold. Hey, Jason. Yeah, that's why I couldn't. That's the guy I was texting with when Eva got off the line there. Yeah. Why don't we talk tomorrow, Jason? Call me sometime. I'll be in town most of the time. In the morning, I might be out at the ranch for a little bit. But give me a call and we can talk in detail. How are you doing? Oh, yeah, we went to a number of mines together years ago. Jason, we lived in Albuquerque and had a business there and everything, and then he moved up to Alaska, and I think he's in Florida now, living there. But he's got the mining bug. Trust me.
Once you get it, it's hard to get rid of.
Yeah, I don't know. I look at it as puzzles. You know, each
That's
one is a
the
puzzle.
part that I liked about it is there's
Yeah,
you're
there's no,
always learning. You're always learning.
there's no pat answer to it. You know, like how do you build a stick and frame home? You know, it's like, well, it's pretty simple. This is how it's done. But anyhow, don't know about the energy situation, but it doesn't really worry me that much, and neither does global warming. As somebody pointed out, there's a couple of things that make me pretty comfortable. Number one, about 1,000 years ago, we had the medieval warm period when it was warmer than now for about 4 centuries, and London didn't go underwater. Agricultural yields increased. Didn't see huge catastrophe then. Don't know why it should be a huge catastrophe now.
And
Number
all that
two.
smoke is cooling us.
Yeah. Number two, there are ways to cool the earth actively. The one I liked was 10,000 little robot ships running around the tropics, spraying seawater into the air to form condensation nuclei to make more tropical clouds.
Yeah.
And so whatever excess temperatures, we can shield from that. And the nice thing about a situation like that is you can turn it on and off at will. So if you know enough to control it, you start it up. But if you find out it's doing too much, you can stop it real quick. Whereas, you know, things like putting carbon dioxide into the air, it takes a long time to come out. But I say it doesn't worry me too much for that reason. Not sure what you mean by polar shift. The rotational axis is not going to shift. Law of conservation of momentum makes that abundantly clear. Magnetic polar shift, those happen. And the magnetic pole is moving pretty rapidly right now. They're starting to think they might have a good understanding of how the internal Earth dynamo works, but it's still pretty speculative in my opinion at this point. Yeah, the magnetic field is definitely shifting. I think it's accelerating too right now, but not a huge problem to my understanding. It doesn't go to zero. You don't get huge amounts of radiation. You certainly don't get the kind of climatic catastrophes you get in, what was it, Day After Tomorrow or whatever that movie was. Yeah. Yeah, 59 feet a year. Yeah, I think it was moving like about a third of that rate earlier this century. It has accelerated, and that does create some issues for navigation and things like that. But as far as I know, there's no real danger, and certainly no civilizational threatening danger that I'm aware of. Say it's you know, it happens. I'm more worried about things like the east slope of Kilauea sliding off into the ocean, which it will sooner or later, and having a nice 100-foot plus tsunami all the way around the Pacific Ocean. I have a nephew on the, well, he's in Hawaii. I think he's on the Big Island, but I'm not sure. But I mean, on the Hawaiian Island side of Oahu, they're expecting 1,000-foot tsunami. That's pretty good run up.
Yeah.
It may affect the weather. Don't know, but again, you deal with it. People forget the weather sucks at times. Look at Germany this week. Yeah. Pine gum, huh? That makes perfect sense to me. Very interesting, Melinda. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I've been trying to work on some sort of chemical alternative to mercury. I don't know if you saw my bacon grease video, but even bacon grease will do a reasonably good job of collecting the microfine gold out of the concentrates that I had at the time. Probably impact mill argonaut. At the 150 pounds an hour, my impact mill will handle it once it's crushed down to about ½ minus, which isn't hard to do. There's lots of jaw crushers that can do that at 150 pounds an hour. But if we're trying to go over that, we'll have to use a bigger impact mill. We have one available, a Stutenroth 2-ton per hour mill, that I'd be looking at how to make sure we get a fine enough grind out of it. Because as I understand it, the way I see it, it's a one pass through whatever it busts it up to machine right now. And so you'd have to have some kind of classification after it ran through the impact mill and rerun your course. But that's what we're looking at right now. I don't understand, Ed or Keith. Your shift doesn't explain temperature increase on some planets, which I have no idea.
Well,
yeah, Melinda,
I don't worry about some planets. I worry about other planets.
I was thinking if you put it on a fabric, you might be able to make the equivalent of a mercury plate to grab the fine gold. The particular stuff on Montana Bee is too fine even for that. The surface tension would keep it from sticking.
Yeah,
it is ridiculously fine.
Fine stuff.
Yep. But let's say pine oil, not necessarily saturated, but enough in it to make it wet. Cloth in a sluice might do something like that. So I say that's one of the things I was thinking of. Right now, this stuff is too fine even for that. If it would stick to pine oil, then you could use froth flotation, and this is too fine probably even for that. And of course, Chris is working on some chemistry that might be useful for that. No surprise there.
Chris is always working on chemistry.
Yeah, he's amazing. But anyhow, so the let's see, the whole idea of the leaching seems to be working well. We'll try and get that put together into a system. Develop something on the order of 1 to 2 tons per day. We probably need a bigger
ore body to worry about anything more than that. If we were to find a substantial size ore body or the particular mines we have, we could expand the ore reserves dramatically, then that might make sense. But above that, with what we currently have in the ground, doesn't make much sense. So, yeah, the pine sol will make it float, David, and it'll tend to stick to the oil and float and clump together. No, not with pine sol. Okay, question for you, Jim.
My best prospect? Well, I'm still working with some big companies on this copper project, and we've been expanding the claims and doing more mapping. I will be up there for next weekend for 3 days with some geologists.
Who owns the new claims?
Me?
You? Okay, you said we're expanding.
Well, I've got a partner,
Okay.
with me. We actually have an LLC
Okay.
set up.
So it's not the companies you're working with. Okay.
Yeah, and then we're working with, trying to find a junior mining company or a big mining company to come in and take it to the next step.
Good night, Melinda.
My partner just bought 160 acres of placer over northwest of here. So sometime here in the near future, I'm going to be moving equipment over there and try to get some test holes in at least.
That'd be good videos.
Yeah, I've been working on history now these afternoons where it's been so hot. I've been doing some research on the history of the area and the drainage and what we could find, which is very little, but we were able to find some information.
Okay.
And then Department of Environmental at one time had done some reclamation on an old cyanide mill that was higher in the drainage.
Uh-huh.
And they had drilled within the drainage farther down to see how much contamination they had.
Yeah.
But what they found was very interesting gold that evidently was never mined. So I was able to, recover some records from the Department of Environmental that don't exist anywhere else. So that was kind of interesting.
Jeff, the centrifugal bowls are supposed to do a good job on fine gold. I don't know what their bottom cutoff is, but this stuff is so fine. And in order to recover it on a gravity system, you have to get mineral liberation. You have to break the gold free of the rock. So when you're dealing with 7 micron gold, you're probably going to have to crush the rock, well, let's say to 10 microns. What is 10 microns on that chart there? I'm guessing 1200 mesh?
2,000, isn't it? No, that's microns. Hang on. What did you say, 10?
10 microns.
Good. 1,250 mesh.
1,250 mesh. So to get good liberation, you're going to have to crush it to like 1,000 mesh. And that is an enormously difficult task. It's much easier just to leach it.
Right.
And of course, Chris has some specs. Good to minus 800 mesh. Yep. And I say that doesn't surprise me a bit, but yeah, it's too fine. If it was even coarser than that, 500 mesh or whatever, I could recover it using my gravity technique here, which would be fine. I would like to run into some ore like that sometime. Although the nice thing is, if you got a leaching circuit too, if you had high grade ore that you could run through gravity to get the coarse stuff and then send your tailings to leaching.
Yep.
Sometimes that works out really well. Dirty Goat says he'll help you test hole.
Yeah.
So I'd say we shall see what happens there.
in general, everything's going pretty good. So yeah, it's smaller than sand. It's smaller than powdered sugar. You know,
Yeah.
I think powdered sugar is only about 800 mesh, something like that.
Good question.
See what that screen do.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about having two here. How small is
See what that
powdered? I'll probably guess if I got that right and got that right. Spacebar, please. Is sugar. Come on. Goodness, it won't even figure it out. Man, they're talking about sifters. I don't care about sifters. Wow, that's confectioner's sugar.
Yeah, that's fine.
Uses, wow, it has some cornstarch to keep it from caking. Apparently they make mills for you to turn regular sugar into powdered sugar.
Of course they do.
It doesn't have a grind size, though, does it?
Yeah.
Oh well.
Powdered
Somebody will
sugar
come up with it.
particle size. You just don't know how to search.
No, I know exactly how to search powdered sugar. The problem is the computer doesn't listen to what you
There you go. It's
ask. And it tries to think of stuff. 50 microns. Okay, so we're 1/10 the size of powdered sugar.
yeah.
Yeah, 50 microns would be about 500 mesh.
Yeah.
You can't see it with the naked eye. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Is it to grind it that small, to liberate it would be extremely expensive and difficult. That gold drop is actually a elutriation column. Looks pretty interesting.
That
Looks
looks
well
kinda
built.
neat, actually. That looks
Yeah.
like it'd be fun to play with.
Yeah. I wouldn't work for my stuff. Again, too small. But the leaching doesn't care. As long as it can get to the gold, it doesn't separate it. It just dissolves it. So that's why you leach, because it does real well in those situations. The smaller the gold, the faster it leaches, and the harder it is for anything else to work. So that's why the leaching, just too fine a gold. And we shall see what we shall see in the long run. But I'm really pleased. 93% in 24 hours. That's a nice result.
Yeah. You're on the right road.
An agitation tank can be fairly large fairly easily. To hold a ton of rock, I think we did that before. Like a 500-gallon tank would be more than enough.
Yeah.
And you can use like an airlift for agitation. You just have a pipe in the middle with air injection at the bottom, and as the air bubbles up the pipe, it sucks the slurry up with it.
Yeah.
And as such,
Just a recycling pump.
Yeah. You can do a recycling pump and use like a jet action. There's all kinds of things.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Let me know when you find that, Terry. I can maybe try that myself. But so yeah, that's the advantage of leaching. Is you can work with the stuff that's too fine for anything else, at least with current technology. It also is generally got wide application. That's the nice thing. And it's not so finicky usually. Like if you had just imagine trying to have a crushing and grinding circuit and a gravity circuit for 1,000 mesh gold. Imagine how finicky that would be. You'd have to have everything pretty precisely controlled.
Yeah.
Whereas with the leaching chemicals, somewhere pH between 10 and a half is good, and, I think you might be able to get a little more than that in an IBC, Chris, but yeah, so it's not that hard. Tankage is not that hard to get. The difficult thing is the crushing, and the tanks don't generally wear out, whereas the mill has a high operating cost, the wear, fuel, things like that. In the big mines, they talk a lot about the energy cost of running those mills.
Well, yeah, but when you're turning a ball mill that's carrying how many ton through it, 500 ton a day, that's burning up a lot of electricity.
David, that's again very ore dependent, but you're generally looking, if you're using vat leaching, in the neighborhood of a week or two, and getting 80-90% recovery if it's amenable to it. When you're talking tank leaching, agitated tank leaching, you're generally talking over 90% recovery, and generally retention times in the neighborhood of 48 hours. So you get more gold in less time, but it costs more per ton. And so you see how that works out. In this case, let's suppose you're using 1 ounce to the ton, which is kind of my general rule of thumb for micro mining. So a tenth of 10% would be $100. So if you're getting 10% better recovery in 1/3 the time with a tank leach, if it costs you less than $100 a ton to do it, it makes a lot of sense, because you're turning a profit by doing that. Yeah, it depends on the ore, what your grind sizes it requires, things like that. That's one of the things we'll be testing. Because of the very high initial recovery rates, as you can see at 6 hours there, you're already looking at like 80% recovery, I think it was. 3 hours, 80% recovery. Still doing pretty good up to 6. At 6 hours, you got 83% recovery. So if you got 83% recovery in 6 hours and then settled the rest and give it a quick settle and move the slimes off first, and then vat leach the rest, that might be the way to go. It wasn't me. Are you going to use a generator to power your mill? My impact mill is gasoline driven. My RC46 is gasoline driven. The Stutenroth mill that we have right now has a gas engine hooked to it. That's entirely possible, Chris. Yes, you recycle the leach solution. That is correct. And if you recover the gold from the solution before you put it back into circuit, then the rate of diffusion out of the mineral particles will be increased significantly. So you generally would do a leach cycle, run it through the recovery circuit, and then send the solution to the next leach cycle. But yes, the solution is, as far as we can tell, reusable indefinitely, so to speak. You're going to lose some. You can't rinse it all completely out, and so you're going to lose some in tailings. And that's why it never lasts forever. But if you're losing, say, 5% tailings, then you essentially use it 20 times before you're done with it. That's pretty good. You do typically have to replenish your reagents as you're doing the leaching. They will combine with stuff other than gold. Even if they're combining with gold, it's using something. Your pH adjusting chemicals, well, when they adjust, they get consumed to a certain extent. So those have to be replenished, but typically replenishment will be at a significantly less amount than it does to make your initial leach solution. Like 10 to 25% consumption or something like that. Again, all this stuff is things we have to test to refine and optimize. Every ore is different. There is no rule of thumb that works for everything except massive, expensive overkill. If you're willing to waste a lot of stuff, you can pretty much just make it work without any thought. But the idea is to figure out where you get your greatest profitability and effectiveness. That sounds perfectly plausible, Chris. He says between a 4 and a 10-to-1 recycle ratio. That sounds perfectly plausible, because how well can you get that stuff out of your tailings? That's the question. And Chris, are we going to have to try and neutralize it in the spent tailings, or can we just let it go and it's sufficiently non-toxic and biodegradable that it's not an issue? Because that's an issue too. Like with cyanide, you have to neutralize your tailings. No, the gold is in solution. It is dissolved in the liquid. There is no solid gold whatsoever left. It is in ionic form. If you were to filter the solution 100%, all particles gone, then your gold is in the clear solution, not the solids. To get the gold out of solution, you can electroplate it, or you can adsorb it. In other words, there's ion exchange resins like you use in a water softener that'll grab the gold, and then you put them in a different chemical condition and they will give up the gold again, and then you would electroplate it there. You would typically do that if it was a lower solution concentration. That makes sense to directly electroplate. And you can even do what they call precipitation or cementation, actually. You take zinc or aluminum dust, you get a clear solution first, you put the zinc or aluminum dust in there, the gold chemically plates onto it, and then you filter that out, you can smelt that. Wolfman, I think he was talking about on disposal. It might be a little too high a pH to just throw away. So we might have to add just a little bit of acid to neutralize our lime or lye. But in terms of pH control, this stuff, the Packrat Penthouse, it worked with no lime. On the dumps, it needed a little bit of lime, but very, very little pH control. Very little hydroxide needs to be added to this to make it work for this particular ore.
Limestone buffer.
I don't know if we need to worry about that.
Up where you're at up there, it's all limestone.
We're looking at 10 to 10.5. And so I don't think that's going to be, limestone buffers at 10. So it's not going to really adjust it too much. Okay, Chris, you say so. I have no clue. We can discuss your evil plan. He's a much better chemist than I am. Call it a theoretical chemist. He understands in more detail how things actually work with one another, like the difference between a good driver and a good mechanic. The driver knows how the car works. The mechanic knows in a lot more detail how the car works. Yes. To reuse the liquids, then we have to do a solid liquid separation. Settling is a lot cheaper than filtration and a lot simpler if you can make that happen. It depends on how you want to electroplate it, Roberts. If you want to do it quick, cheap, and dirty, you can use something like steel wool, which has an enormous amount of surface area and can be dissolved later. If you want to do it more fancy, you can, you could do a two-stage process where you electroplate onto one metal first, a metal plate or grid, and then take that and then put it in a secondary cell and refine it some more by electroplating it to another one. In that second cell, you could use either like a thin piece of gold foil to start. I mean, gold leaf is really cheap, and you got a fair amount of surface area for very few dollars, and you just plate gold onto gold. It makes for a nice, pure thing to throw into your furnace. Or you could plate it onto like polished stainless steel and then peel it off when it got thick enough. It depends a lot on exactly the details that make sense for your particular process. Yes, that's correct, Jeff. Limestone will be usually added to a 2-acid material to bring it up. But limestone can bring it up to a total of pH of 10 if it was like pure limestone and water. Chris, also carbon is also a good electrode material because it doesn't dissolve, it doesn't corrode. And so that's something you could peel it off of also. Lars, I don't know. I'm going to ask Chris to answer your question there. 1700 degrees for roasting sulfides may be hotter than you need. Not to my knowledge, Rick. This stuff is essentially non-toxic. It's a good idea to wear a dust mask anytime you're using chemicals that are dusty. Yeah, Chris, that's what I was wondering. I mean, I thought the carbon doesn't really like to do thiosulfate ions.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David. Yeah, they make all kinds of carbon electrodes for various things, but it's a commonly used electrode material where you don't want it to interact with the solution that you're electrodifying,
Get technical now.
Yeah, we could just get a wider camera and have Chris here. We could really do this a lot better
here. Yeah, we need Chris here.
Yeah.
What are you doing in California?
Getting ready to run, hopefully.
Chris should be able to find a way to do a split screen live stream between his house and here.
We probably could figure that out.
I wouldn't count on me figuring it out, but somebody should be able to.
We can count on you swearing and threatening to break things.
Probably. But yeah, I say carbon electrode, and they make carbon fiber mat and stuff like that, which provides a lot of surface area for an electrode. I don't know if you've considered that, Chris, for your primary cathode in the primary cell, but that might work out pretty good. Yeah, I'd stay well away from that flue gas for now, Lars. That's some nasty stuff. I'm not sure, David. Well, we'll try some stuff and see what happens. Yeah, I heard that, Pat. It's ridiculous. Yeah. The whole situation is just out of control, in my opinion. Here, heard today on
Australia, they've really just, man, that's almost like being
Yeah, something about
terrorized.
taping their doors shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that was just a particular team that had to do that, because they were on the balcony of the hotel passing drinks to each other and stuff. So they have to tape the door shut so they don't cheat. But yeah, on Garrett Lewis's show in Tucson this morning, some big thing had a big study out that found that they're getting a significant number of patients with COVID that have had the vaccine, but no patients with COVID that have had COVID. So apparently getting COVID is superior to the vaccine.
They won't even talk about herd immunity.
And it also protects against COVID-1. You know, SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome.
Yeah.
If you get COVID, it's protective against SARS-CoV-1. So that was interesting.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. We're not, if you could get any truth at all out of what's going on.
Well, and the thing is, at this point, even if they had the truth, who would believe it?
Oh, well, probably some people wouldn't. They'd never buy the truth.
Because they've lied so many times,
Right.
that it's like, so your lips are moving. Am I carrying?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep, that's true.
And that's quite unfortunate, because it would be nice to have an authoritative source of information which you could trust, and then we could maybe all get on the same page. It's like me talking to that guy Chris in Norway. Because we're working on different fact sets, it's impossible to agree on reality.
Right.
Because he sees one thing, I see another, but when you look into details, because he believes these facts over here are true, and I believe these facts are true.
Right.
And so there's no way to agree on reality.
Yeah,
and that creates a very dangerous situation in a society when you have large groups of people that literally cannot agree. And so that's why we need to fix that.
Pretty much.
As far as I know, she's not planning on using colloidal silver on the hand. It's basically just an avulsion and seems to be healing just fine. Colloidal silver would probably work well if she started to get any kind of an infection.
Good night, Terry.
I'm not planning to use colloidal silver.
Chris says it'll also make it turn blue.
Well, it'll make you turn blue if you drink too much of it, that's for darn sure.
Good night, Terry. He says good night, Eva.
Good night, Terry.
See, she was saying good night before I even told her. See, she's noticed. She's noticed.
I is brilliant. We all know this.
So anyhow, yeah, it's very unfortunate and very dangerous too, when you have two large groups of people in a society that believe different things sincerely. I mean, they're not in their minds being duplicitous at all. They actually believe it. You know, it's like the election. There's people who believe it was fair and people who don't believe it was fair. And until somebody investigates in a sufficiently transparent and indisputable way, you're not going to change many people's minds on either side. That's going to be difficult. Yeah, well, Chris, I had a chemistry teacher, and I think it was my sophomore year in high school. And we had a class, and he had a little beaker, a little like 50 mil beaker or something like that. He had a dime in the bottom of it. And he passed around and goes, now stick your fingers in that and feel the dime. Okay. And it had this really odd waxy feel to it. They couldn't see anything on it, but it felt kind of waxy. By about the time the beaker got to the last person, the first person knows that their hand is starting to turn color. And what it was is silver nitrate.
Yeah.
And you get it on your skin, and it reacts with the salt to form silver chloride. and in very colloidal form, which is a photochemical, which when exposed to light turns into silver, which in very small particles is black. So the next day, you could tell everyone who had Mr. Johnston for a teacher, because about 300 kids were walking around with black index fingers. It was hilarious.
Crap, nowadays that.
Yeah.
Nowadays, he gets sued for poisoning.
Yeah, right, or yeah, they'd have him for something.
Yeah, no, the duct tape is merely there to hold the bandaging stuff on, because the stuff I have was kind of old, and the cling wrap didn't have much cling left in it. It had the stretch. So we have the ointment on first, then a sterile gauze pad, then cling wrap, and then duct tape to make sure the cling wrap doesn't come undone. So, yeah. Oh, he wasn't he was funny. One time, Chris, do you remember in high school where they used to have a thing that had a light bulb and 2 electrodes there, and you could put different beakers of different solutions under it and measure the conductivity by how bright the light bulb was? Okay. And so my friend Alan Johnson and I were doing this test one time, and there's these 2 copper strips, which are the electrodes, and a regular 110 volt light bulb and a 110 volt plug. This thing probably wouldn't pass safety standards nowadays, because, I mean, those are 2 electrodes with 110 volts AC between them, right? So anyhow, we were cleaning it up a little bit or everything, and I said, is it ready? And Alan goes, yeah. And then he said, which I didn't hear, just a second, because we cleaned them and stuff, and they'd gotten a little cattywampus. So he grabbed them to straighten them up just as I plugged it in. Now, if you take a look, if you're doing like this and you have a strap going here and your hand clenches, it wraps around your finger. So he had these 2 copper straps wrapped around his fingers. He was making some unusual noises. And I look over, I see what's going on. So I yank the plug out. So he's because he was backing away. He already figured I need to pull the plug out, you know. And anyhow, so the teacher walks over, you know, concerned. He goes, are you all right? And Alan goes, yeah, I'm fine. He says, are you sure you're all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Did you notice that the light bulb lit up? That's Mr. Johnston for you. He was hilarious.
Tell them about your oxyacetylene experiment.
No, not that. Now, I'm in chemistry class. Now, we had another one. Again, you couldn't do this today. This was back in the Cold War days. For all of you people under 40, for a long time, global thermonuclear war was an everyday concern. Okay? All it takes one person to make one mistake, and all kinds of stuff would happen. So we had a Geiger counter. That's a chemistry class, you know, Geiger counter, and we had 4 little bottles of radium salts, about the size of the bottles that used to the tester paint for painting models came, about that size. Yeah. Okay, and they had different intensities of radiation coming from them. So we were taking the Geiger counter and testing various insulating material, you know, shielding materials like a piece of paper, and put it inside the crock and do the outside, things like this. And then I had an evil thought. And I rarely have these evil thoughts, but this time I came along and I said, this is good. We had a guy in our class named Harold Kirscher, I believe it was. And he was just the odd man out. He wasn't the geek, he wasn't that smart, but he was just socially inept. So, I mean, if he was a chicken, he'd be dead, because they would have just pecked him to death, you know? Yeah. Anyhow, so I looked at Alan, who had the Geiger counter across from me, and I go, hey, Alan, I've got an idea.
You know, just a little bit like that, like just follow my lead here. I go, you know, we were all born around the 60s and stuff, and they were doing those atmospheric, you know, nuclear tests back then.
Yeah.
And strontium-90 collects in your bones. So I wonder if any of our bones have enough radioactivity in them that we could detect it. And so, you know, I said, where's the, you know, your skull has a lot of bone right close, you know, just a little layer of skin. It's right close to the surface. So I started, so he starts going around checking people's, you know, skulls like this, right?
Yeah.
And he's putting it up next to kind of like next to their ears. And I'd palmed the most powerful radiation source. And so as he's bringing this up to Harold Kircher's ears, I'm standing behind Harold at this point, and I bring it right up to the Geiger counter probe. And it pegged that son of a gun. That needle, whoa, all the way over. It was hilarious. Poor Harold. But everyone else could see what was going on except Harold, because I was doing it behind him. Everyone else knew exactly what had happened. It was hilarious. And of course, he knew within a few seconds. But yeah, it worked out so, because I timed it. So just as he was bringing it up, I was bringing the thing up. And it couldn't have been better choreographed to mimic exactly what you'd expect if his head was about to glow, you know? So yeah, that was pretty fun. Oh, I wasn't a bad kid. I just wasn't very conventional, and you know, we like to play with stuff. You know how many ants you can burn to death in one afternoon with sufficient flammable materials in the desert? You know, we were just, yeah, we did some crazy stuff. Eva wants to talk about our oxyacetylene experiments. First of all, does anyone have any questions on gold mining or anything? Does anyone not want me to tell funny stories? And we'll go from there. So I'll give it a few minutes. Or about a minute, I think. There's a huge time delay. You guys can type it and see it instantly, but I can't.
Yeah, maybe they want to hear about it.
I've got one for listening to the stories. I was actually writing a book one time called Yuma by Midnight.
Yuma by Moonlight.
My Moonlight, exactly.
Still need to finish it.
Because Yuma is really hot in the summer times, so most of the stuff we did was at night for safety reasons. Anyhow, I have no gold mining messages, so okay. Anyhow, same chemistry class, they went, and he had a experiment one time where he generated hydrogen gas by putting aluminum in lye, and it reacts and creates hydrogen. So every Monday or Wednesday, I forget, my stepfather had bowling league 2 blocks that way, and Mom would usually go with him. So Randy and I'd be at the house alone for 2 or 3 hours. We did everything from making large sheet cookies to whatever. And so one night we decided, well, we'll make some hydrogen. You know, we'll generate some hydrogen, see what happens. I forget what kind of container we had, but it had just a bottle of some sort, everything. So we filled a thing with hydrogen and then tried to lit it, and it doesn't make any kind of a boom because it's all hydrogen in the plastic bag. You just like the Hindenburg did, you know? And so my stepfather, who was a nice guy, by the way, but he had a lung condition, so he had
a treatment he had to take like twice a day where he was breathing stuff through a nebulizer. And so he had a big oxygen tank in the house. So we filled the balloon about half full of hydrogen, and we filled it with oxygen, sat it out there, and boom. It's like, that's pretty cool. Now, decent bang. Then we had, back then, you know, they used to have carbide lamps were fairly common.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you people know about it, but calcium carbide, when you add water to it, creates acetylene. Now, they used to use this. They'd have a little lamp that you'd hang on your head, and it had a water reservoir and then some carbide. And you had a little
on cars,
little drip valve, so you'd start the water dripping onto the carbide and a little sparker there to light it up, and you had this little flame, and that would give you illumination. Well, carbide was easy to get. Got oxygen. Well, this hydrogen oxygen thing was kind of cool. Let's try acetylene and oxygen. So we took a plastic. It's about like a 1 gallon Ziploc, although they didn't have Ziplocs back then, so we had to tie it. So we put some oxygen in it. Then we put it on the acetylene generator. We started filling it up. And our fuse was rather rudimentary. A paper towel, light one side, stand back, you know. And so we lit the paper towel, starts burning towards the plastic bag.
The bomb.
There's a car coming by. So we take a shovel and put it on the paper towel to block the flame. Car's gone. Pull the shovel up. Takes a little while to really start burning it. Another car. Chink. Finally, after the second or third car, I mean, the shovel's angled like this to keep the flame from getting to the bag. And so the car says, pull that. Just starts. Boom! Oh my God, it was like my 44 Magnum. Holy crap. And so we all just froze for a second. Immediately our minds go through the possibilities, figure out the same immediate answer. We run into the house, wait about 10 seconds, then come running back out. What was that? In case the neighbors noticed. Now, oxygen acetylene burns at over 5,000 degrees. The explosion was so powerful, it shredded the plastic bag. It did not melt it. It shredded it. And we thought, wow, that worked good. So, being boys, bigger is better. Got to have more power. So, we went out. We had a friend named Dart Easterday. And his father owned a farm. I think it was about 100 acres across the river there, about 10 miles away. So we came up with a plan. First of all, I made a remote detonator. 50 feet of lamp cord, some nichrome wire, a kitchen timer with an electric, and a plug-in. So you turn the kitchen timer, plug it in, stand back, and if anything goes wrong, you're 50 feet away when you're setting the timer and plugging it in. Should be safe, right? Well, there was a minor little detail. Anyone who can think of the little minor detail we forgot can type it. Chris, not you. Can type it in the comments right now. But anyhow, so here's the plan. We now have an oxyacetylene torch. We can get a pretty good flame going on it, blow it out, and we got a good mixture going on. And they went and we were going to do this with a garbage bag. I mean, a full garbage bag, right? Put the torch in there. We have the igniter already in there. Now I'm holding the bag onto the end of the torch with my hand. No glove. Okay. Dart is standing there across from me holding the torch like this because he's adjusted the valves. Okay. I am wearing a motorcycle helmet because I was going to be the guy to set the detonator, right? I'm glad I had it on. And then when the bag was approximately 1/4 full, it detonated spontaneously. Okay. Now, remind me, this is vastly more than our little
1 gallon, bag. And I was holding it like this, and I had a rash on my leg here from where the explosion blew debris through my pants into my leg. My hand, see how you got these major creases here?
Yeah.
I had 3 blisters. One here, one here, one here. I mean, the whole palm of my hand was essentially one blister. Okay? My ears were ringing substantially, and I'm kind of dazed. I look over to Dart, and I go, Dart, are you okay? And he goes, what? And so that's right, David, you got it. Static electricity. As the sides of the bag peel apart, you get these little static sparks, which normally are not even noticeable, but are more than sufficient to initiate the oxygen acetylene. Previously, we'd put the oxygen in first, which gets the bag fluffy expanded, then the acetylene, so there was no peeling apart with an explosive mixture. So, yeah, it was pretty loud. We didn't try that experiment again.
Oh, you learned something.
And I had to explain to my mom why I had 3 big burns on the palm of my hand. I said we had problems with my truck, and I burned it on the exhaust manifold, and she believed me. But yeah, that was fun, and we did all kinds of things. Now, one thing we can do in the Yuma that you cannot do here, we can light fires and not worry about them burning out of control because there's no way to propagate. So one time we went and we got a bunch of bottles from the side of the road because we wanted to be debris neutral. Okay, we started with trash. We're going to make trash.
Mm-hmm.
Then we went out to some place in the middle of nowhere, and we filled them up with gasoline where they were stopped, set them down, lit the tops of the bottles on fire, and then shot them. And a 22 with a Coke bottle makes a nice 6-foot ball of flame.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, sweet. Now, if you want to have some real fun, you take like a 1 gallon can, cap it, and set it out there amongst all these bottles. And after you shot all the bottles, then you shoot the gallon can with something like, say a 25-06 Model 700.
Yeah.
And that makes about a 20-foot ball of flame. And
This is a guy thing, okay?
It is. Yeah, we tried propane tanks, and I blew a pond one time and ended up taking out the windows on a guy's house about a half a mile down the road.
Dynamite?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, actually some fertilizer too. 55-gallon drum of fertilizer.
Yeah. We used to go out there.
It made a beautiful pond, but boy, does that rock the earth.
Yeah.
I would have never believed it if I wouldn't have been there to see
you
it.
shouldn't try cast blasting when you don't own the land for a mile in all directions.
Well, there was a hill in the way. We didn't think it'd be a problem.
Ballistics wasn't your strong suit, right? By the way, for all of you who do not know, if you're near a blast when it goes off, the fly rock that's going to kill you is up there,
Right.
not over there. Look up because it slows down quickly and then falls steeply. So it's not the one over there, it's that one.
Yeah.
I talked to a guy, we had a guy with us one time, and he said they were at some quarry someplace, and it was like lunchtime, and they were going to blast. So everyone was supposed to, hide behind their equipment stuff. And he said, and I don't know if this is true or not, he said this one guy was standing there watching the blast, and they said, aren't you going to get? He says, you got to die sometime. And then a piece of fly rock hit him in the head and killed him deader than a doornail.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Yep. That's a good point, Ed. Blisters, and yet it's still a feel-good story. Oh, yeah, we used to go out rabbit hunting at night and stuff like that. We'd be driving down the rabbits loved alfalfa. For some reason, the farmers didn't love the rabbits. They were perfectly happy for us to perforate as many as we could. They have worms and parasites down there. It never gets cold enough.
Right.
So you never keep any. You just leave them for the coyotes. But we go out at night and sit on the, it was nice when we had a pickup or the Jeep because we could stand in the back of it and hold on to a roll bar or something. Sometimes we were with my brother's old I think it was a 67 Falcon wagon or something like that. It had to be, yeah, it's like 65, 67, something like that. And no, David, we never did that, but we came close one time. I'll tell you about that in a second. So we'd be driving down these field roads and stuff and shooting rabbits and catching snakes and stuff like that. Now, David Villa says, using 22 rifles, hiding behind telephone poles and shooting at each other. Now, that doesn't sound very intelligent, okay? And I'll give you some crazy points on that one, okay? But one time, we used to hunt the citrus groves. And the citrus groves were about 150, 200 yards long from one end of the row of trees to the other. Then there'd be a road, and there'd be ditches and berms, and then another, farm road and stuff like this. And there was a bunch of rabbits. One day we went out, and I said, how many rabbits are we going to see? So I taped a piece of paper to my gun stock, and I made a hash mark every time we saw apparently a new rabbit. Now, some of them had to be duplicates, but I mean, we chase them around a bit, and if we lose it, okay, that's one rabbit. 156 rabbits in 4 hours.
Yeah,
we saw. But anyhow, my brother came up with a brilliant idea. The rabbits, probably because they have ears, were generally midway or farther down the roads because we're walking down here and they're trying to get away from us.
Right.
So my brother came up with the brilliant idea of, well, why don't we put people at both ends of the grove? We're like, well, there seems to be a certain obvious flaw in your plan.
Well, that works with shotguns.
So how do you
get a limited distance?
So how do you wish to address this issue? And he says, well, it's simple. I get to the far end of the row. I'll start walking. You give me time to get 6, 7 rows in front of you. And then you start walking too, and we shouldn't have any problems. Okay. We'll give it a shot. Go ahead. So he goes down the far end of the thing, starts heading off. Me and Steve sat there and go, is that enough time? Not yet. Yeah, I think so too. Keep it. Then it's like, okay, he's definitely got to be 6, 7, 8 rows ahead of us by now. So we start at a very leisurely pace. Now, God, being the entity that he is, decided this is going to be funny. So he sent a rabbit to poke its nose out in front of my brother and then come running hell-bent for leather back our direction. And my brother's running along, seeing it, shoot, rabbit, rabbit tree. Finally, he gets a shot at the rabbit. The first thing we know is when a bullet kicks up about 15 feet in front of us, and we start yelling. Yeah, it was kind of funny. One time, my brother also tried to clear a plug in the end of his 12 gauge. He was walking, he stumbled, stuck it in some damp sand. So he tried to clear the plug. Now, any guesses to how he thought would be an excellent way of clearing this plug?
Firing it?
Yes.
Ouch.
Now, not only does it do an amazing Elmer Fudd imitation to the end of your shotgun barrel, but shrapnel doesn't just fly that way because it wraps around and flies this way. So yeah,
every direction.
One can pass
like
me.
A hand grenade.
Oh yeah, exactly. But so public service announcement: Arizona sucks rocks. Don't clear a plug in a gun by pulling the trigger. It's not safe. Trust me. So oh yeah, we used to do all kinds of crazy crap. I was really blessed to have a brother that I got along well with, that we had similar interests,
We like to go hunting and fishing and outdoors and bicycle riding and go catch lizards. And we had a game we play out behind our house. We had a house, and this whole block behind us was owned by a church. And they didn't have a lawn or anything like that. That's expensive to keep up in Yuma. But there was an area between our house and the church, I don't know, I'm guessing 75, maybe 100 feet across, maybe 2 or 3 times that long, the length of the church. So we invented a game we call Invasion. And what it was we'd take a Frisbee, and sometime, I'm not sure where, somebody had been building a house, and so they'd cut off some short pieces of a piece of cable. Or actually wire, stranded wire, not cable. And we had a line in this lot, and the berm for the alley was one boundary, the church was the other, and the end lines of the church, the wall ends, were the out of bounds aren't, and we have a line. And the idea is you have to throw the Frisbee, and it has to land unmolested on the other guy's turf. It's invasion. You're trying to invade, right? And you can grab it, you can kick it, you can smack it with the cable, which was fun because it made a heck of a good sound. We go through a few Frisbees that way. But, and you can even throw your thing. I mean, if you're not going to get to it, throw it. You may or may not hit it. It's tumbling, so it may literally go over the Frisbee as it does that. But it was a pretty fun game for 2 energetic boys. We'd be running around for hours out there because, each guy's trying to get it as far from the other guy as possible. But if you throw it fast, it has to come to a stop. So if you throw it fast and it's just rolling on the ground, it's still fair game. So you're trying to get some nuance here and some this. I got the wind in my favor, so I can throw it like this. Like, but then it's sitting there doing that little hover thing. Yeah. Smack! Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had us some fun. Caught hundreds of poor helpless lizards. We took good care of them, though. So, yeah, we had a lot of fun. And, it's amazing we survived relatively unscathed. I mean, I probably had, 20 stitches by the time I was 15 from various little things.
Don't forget when your whole back got sliced open.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when I was it had to be before 9, because we moved from Tucson when I was 9, I believe. I think it was about 6. And we were playing on an old underground storage tank that had been dug out and set on the ground. And there was a piece of rebar laying up against it. You kind of grab it and shinny up and stuff. So we were up on top of this tank. And to get back down, you kind of lean over and then kind of jump and grab the rebar and swing to the ground. I missed. So I landed on the piece of H-beam that was underneath it on my back. And so right there at the base of my spine, according to the other witnesses, I was unable to see, there was a spinal process sticking out. Those little things on your spinal thing, it was sticking out of this gash. And people nowadays don't really, nowadays you just don't move, call the ambulance. Back then it was, we got to get them to the hospital. So first my brother gave me a piggyback ride home about a block because I was hurting, and he didn't realize it was probably better to let me walk than to do that. But whatever, we were 2 little kids. Get home, and Mom sees this. And now, mind you, all I know is it hurts. Mm-hmm. It hurts pretty good. But everyone seems to be freaking out a bit here, So Mom sees, don't move, just lay there. Goes and gets the neighbors, because they had like a big boat of a car, like a Cadillac or a Lincoln or something, And they put me in the back seat, laying face down, and haul me off to the hospital. And, got a couple stitches there. Nothing was seriously injured, but I presume it was relatively emotional to look at. Luckily, I couldn't see it, so I didn't get highly emotional. Because I bet you that would have freaked me out.
I have seen
I've seen bad enough stuff. It doesn't.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
not a single new mining
no
question.
mining questions. We must be done for the
Man.
night.
Anyone got any suggestions or anything here? Because I think I've run out of funny stories for one night. Still got 22 people listening to me regale them with my humor. Dettol. What the heck is Dettol? That must be something like, is it like a liniment or something that you have down there in Australia? You know, like a sorbine up here is used for almost everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's made for horses, but it'll work.
We had Bactine. Was that Bactine was what they had here, right? Yeah.
But the absorbine we used all the time too. It was for the horses, but
Yeah, because it
hell,
stings like hell.
yeah.
Good for
Clean
you,
out.
Wolfman. Now, does anyone want to try and persuade Eva to try to read that thing she sent to that guy? Antiseptic, huh? How do I get my truck fixed to go to a claim? If you're a pretty girl, I could tell you how to do this pretty easily. You might or might not enjoy it, depending, but yep. Well, little one, do you want to read that or not?
I actually would prefer not to.
Okay, she prefers not to. I think it's too personal. But yeah, she's an amazing. She can string words together really good when she gets on it.
Very Reader's Digest version. Dude's mom is dying of cancer, so he wrote an open letter to extraterrestrials on Reddit to give them good reasons why they should save his mom. And, of course, a few born-agains weighed in and said he should be talking to God. And he never said, he said he has no problem talking to God. He does that too. He's covering all his bases here. And nobody addressed the ETs. So I addressed the ETs.
Can everyone hear her? Is that the end of the story? As far as you're going to say it?
Yes, basically
Okay.
I just pointed out to him that we are all made of stars to begin with, and that our physical body is extraordinarily limiting. And when we die, we go back and become part of the whole universe again. And we become something more wonderful than we could possibly imagine. And that, this is not something that is necessarily fun for the people that are left behind.
I'm not sure how well they're hearing it. Mr. Virtue says kind of.
Yeah.
No, it's too far away, little one. Anyhow.
Well, it's not important. I will write up an essay on the issue that I will read to you at some point.
Okay. She'll illuminate us later. Okay, anything else, anybody? So strange. It's only 9:30. See, that's what happens when you don't bling anything. I got to carry the whole show.
Well, you did good, though.
Man.
Actually, that subject is interesting.
Yeah, it can get kind of complicated. I'll try and make a video on it.
I could bring some
this week.
copper ore, and we could start testing some of that and see if we.
And you're probably happy about that, Jeff. You're welcome, Wolfman.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and we'll
Good night,
try to
everybody.
put another show together for next week.
Oh, yeah. Well, I definitely have some leaching stuff to do. And I'm not sure if we're going to be doing much in the way of sampling or whatever, but I will have some results of the samples I took this trip, so I can at least tell you what happened. So, anyhow, any other questions, anybody? Going once. What's your plan for the placer on the exploration side, Jim? What are you doing exploring?
Well, I've been doing some historical first because I wanted to figure out. I found some old maps that somebody had dug about 100-yard drain into that drainage, So I wanted to try to figure out what they did. But I'm going to have to lay out a grid pattern on some of it and then just start digging holes and probably taking, 5 or 10 yard samples from each hole and running them, through the plant and see what the goal looks like to, decide if it's worth mining. It looks like there's probably a good mile of the drainage that's never been mined. It looks fairly flat. So it could be really, really rich and really fun, but you don't know until you dig test holes.
I'll try and do sometime soon here, Mr. Virtue, where I actually show the actual chiseling of the sample.
Yeah, I could do that, Chris.
If you look at the last video, you can see the pieces of sample laying there, and then all I have to do is be bagged. And Jeff, maybe you should tell him if you don't fix my truck, I'll get together with your sister. It's worth a shot, huh? So, okay, I'll try and do that. A lot of times lately I've been taking samples where I'm hanging down a decline, and that's not conducive for someone else taking the video. And it's it's actually a 3-handed job, but I've only got to do it with 2. But I'll do what I can. When I was doing those ones on surface, I could have probably done it then without it. Argonaut, I usually start with government sources. Every state's got a geological survey or Bureau of Mines or something like that. Start with them and see what you can find out. Online, they've got the diggings and a few others, but I haven't found them to be super useful. Ed, when it comes to microfine gold, I don't know. When it comes to fine gold, absolutely. The mat makes a big difference. The flow rate, the slope, things like that make big, big difference. Okay? All right, everybody. Oh, goodness. See, Keith, Chris is there for you. Eva will be back for tinfoil hat. Don't know what that is. I'm going to be doing leach testing, so I'll have hopefully more results on that, but I definitely want to get a video up which kind of explains things a little better to record it for people. And there's lots of stuff free online if you go to the government stuff. It doesn't cost anything, a lot of these government sites. I've done follow-up stuff where I've got one piece of paper and it references a government report. I can just look it up. U.S. Geological Report, Survey Report, such and such, 1898 or whatever, and there it is on the internet, free and for nothing.
Yeah, I've been able to find a lot too.
Yeah.
Or reference, old newspapers and things like that for information on areas, mining jurisdictions.
Yeah. If you're just trying to test fine tailings to see if there's anything in it, Keith, I'd use my panning technique. It's a much more reliable way of catching really microfine gold, but it won't get it all. You start getting really fine stuff like you get in arsenal pyrite ores and such. Yeah, good luck. Those stuff like a Montana B, I get maybe a 20th of it in the pan. It's insane. Yeah. As a matter of fact, the last 5 samples I panned, I didn't see anything in the pan.
That's the problem.
And one of them came back 0.04, 1.07, 1.7.
and I couldn't see anything in the pans.
You know,
Jeez.
that's why you want to do the assays, though, to make
Yeah.
sure you're not.
Well, and that's the thing is that's great for leaching. It just sucks for trying to find it with a pan, but it'll assay just fine. Anything else?
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night, everybody. Take care, and you can always get a hold of me in the middle of the week by leaving a comment on any of my videos. So happy prospecting and keep it safe out there.